Yo, what's up guys? Welcome back to Audiobook Dynasty. If you want early access and even more parts for free, make sure to join me on Patreon. Chapter 16, Allan Sensei. Fearing Allan noticing her glances, Mito quickly withdrew her gaze as she felt guilty of even entertaining such thoughts. But she confirmed one thing, this boy, no, this young man is up to her standards. If she was to end up with him, it wouldn't be a bad thing. After mustering up her courage, she looked at Allan to give him an answer, but before she could talk, Allan patted her shoulder and said, okay, I'm kidding, don't get so nervous. Eh? Kidding? Mito was taken aback and looked at Allan dumbfoundedly. For a while, Mito tried to sort out her complicated feeling as she was obviously ready to agree to his request, but he went and said that he was kidding. What is this? Is it fun playing with my feelings? Mito bit her teeth and glared at Allan fiercely. Allan avoided her gaze as he didn't in his wildest dreams think that Mito would look at him so favorably. He only thought that she glared at him because of his joke. Well, I shouldn't have made such a joke. I promise I will teach Yunan to make it up for you. Mito was still unhappy. She felt that it didn't matter whether she learned Nen or not because she was currently too mad at him. With her strong character and stubbornness, she wasn't willing to let it go. After making up her mind, she decided to train hard and let the boy notice her charm as a woman. Mito directly said, then teach me as fast as you can. Seeing that she was no longer angry, Allan took her to the forest, where he usually practiced. The place was a bit away from the village, about 3 or 4 kilometers away from the village. When they reached the forest, Allan didn't speak, and this got in Mito's nerves, so she asked, now, what are we going to do? What should you do? Let me think for a bit. Allan pretended to be deep in thoughts before he playfully said, I think you should, first of all, call me sensei. What? Mito thought she misheard him and asked, you want me to call you sensei? Why? If you ask me to teach you, then you should call me sensei, right? Mito was speechless. This wasn't excessive, but she really couldn't say it. SS. Sensei. Finally, she stuttered and was red from shyness before she could say it. No, that not right. Allan corrected her, you should call me, Allan sensei. Mito blushed even harder. She knew that Allan was doing this on purpose, but she couldn't do anything. After she tried to retort, she swallowed it away and said while struggling, Allan. Allan sensei. Hearing her saying Allan sensei made him feel very happy. Mito saw his enjoyment and couldn't help saying, Allan, I'm older than you, shouldn't you be kind to your elders? Of course. Allan nodded. He can live here thanks to Mito, and he knows that he should treat her kindly. Mito finally sighed in relief. But again, Allan did let her go, but this and that are two different matters. I'm now your teacher, so since you are the student, it's normal for you to call me sensei, right? Mito felt that his words were reasonable, but calling him sensei was one thing, but adding Allan to that made her too embarrassed. Hi, Allan sensei, please teach me Nen. I will be obedient. In the end, she surrendered. A victory smile appeared on Allan's lips. He felt accomplished, as if he just conquered this woman. Mito blushed and lowered her head without daring to look at Allan in his eyes. Then, let me first teach you the theoretical knowledge about Nen before we start anything else. Mito listened carefully as the boy started teaching her. She was determined to train hard and prove to the boy that she wasn't an ordinary woman. Allan was also teaching her seriously. Mito was gifted in the same way Gon and Jing were, and this was probably because they had the Freaks family blood in their veins. Rumors said that the Freaks had an ancestor called Don Freaks 300 years ago, who was a very powerful character. T/N, Don Freaks is supposedly the ancestor of Gon, who was the one to write the Journey to the New World, which was a book about the Dark Continent, but this isn't confirmed yet in the manga. And Mito was different from Gon. She wasn't dumb, so she quickly understands what Nen was after just his first explanation. And with her understanding of what Nen is, she can start training in it. Like with Gon, Allan gave Mito a choice to choose if she wanted to learn Nen gradually with meditation or use the same method as Gon and forcefully open her aura nodes. Mito's choice was the first one. 3 days passed like this, and on the 4th day, Mito successfully opened her aura nodes by relying on herself. Allan used Gyo, only to see Mito's body exuding a great amount of Nen. Mito felt the energy coursing through her body and was happy with her achievement. Congratulations, you successfully took your first step in learning to use Nen. Allan's words were sincere, as he really felt happy for her. She only took 3 days, which was indeed an accomplishment. So this is what Nen is like. It's really amazing. Feeling the amazing energy moving through her body, Mito raised her head and said gratefully, Allan, thank you. No, these aren't the right words to say. Allan shook his head directly. Mito blushed and immediately corrected herself and said in a low voice, thank you, Allan sensei. You're welcome, Allan said happily. Next, I will teach you the basic skills of Nen, so you need to train hard to master them. I will train hard, Mito answered seriously. She felt that a new world was about to open in front of her because of this boy. While Allan smiled, looking at the serious Mito who can be a first-class Nen user in the future. And he can proudly say at that time, do you know her? She is my student. Half a month later, with Allan's guidance, Mito could use the basics of the Nen of the Flame. She was as good as Gon or slightly better in terms of progress. Allan looked at her with admiration. Originally, he thought that she was just an ordinary beautiful woman, but he didn't expect her talent to be not only good but maybe even better than Gon. Allan, thanks for your guidance in the past half a month. Mito looked at him with sincerity. She was just an ordinary woman, but now, she had realized how magical Nen was. Nen can easily make her stronger. Now, she won't have trouble fighting a few big guys alone. Allan smiled mysteriously as Mito thanked him and replied, it wasn't hard at all. This is what I should do. Allan was already rewarded by the system as he taught Mito, and now, his ice was even stronger than before. It meant that his ability to make ice is now even stronger than it was previously. Mito didn't know what Allan was thinking, but she looked at him and blushed again. Well, you don't need to be polite now, I did promise you anything if you teach me, so I have to keep my end of the deal. Well, in that case, let me think for a bit. Allan thought for a while, making Mito nervous. Have you decided? Mito asked, and without knowing why she was slightly nervous about his request. Allan glanced up and down, sizing Mito up deliberately, and said, well, generally speaking, there are two ways to thank me. Which are? The first one is a verbal thanks, which is almost meaningless. What about the other one? Allan looked at Mito and said, well, it's simple. You will have to agree to the previous matter. Mito blushed with a puff of smoke above her head. Allan couldn't contain himself any longer and burst out laughing, haha, just kidding. I'm not a scum who would take advantage of others like that. Mito immediately looked at Allan fiercely. This wasn't his first time teasing her, after all. There is nothing to do on the island except for training, and he got happy each time he teased Mito and seeing her blush. Fortunately for him, Mito wasn't angry. She suddenly remembered something and became seriously, by the way, Allan, can I ask you to do me a favor? Okay. Allan said readily, what is it? Mito hesitated for a moment before she said, Allan, can I ask you to go with Gon to the hunter exam? Why? Allan was taken aback. To be honest, he wasn't interested in the hunter exam. Mito explained, Gon grew up here where I could watch him, he is a child with a simple heart, and the outside world would most likely be really dangerous. I don't want Gon to do anything he shouldn't do, so I hoped that you could accompany him. If you are with him, I will be relieved. Allan nodded thoughtfully, so, you are worried that Gon will meet some bad guys. Well, that right. Gon is too naive and easy to deceive. Mito was really worried about Gon. Allan couldn't help smiling when he heard this, because that's quite possible. With Gon's single-cell brain, he would definitively be deceived. At this moment, the system gave Allan a choice. 1. Accept Mito's request and participate in the hunter exam. Reward, Marine's Rokushiki, Jeppo, Moonwalk. 2. Reject Mito's request and let Gon fend for himself. Reward, Marine's Rokushiko, Soru. Allan was shocked. The reward this time was from another world entirely. It was from One Piece, the Rokushiki, 6 powers of the marine. This was a rare ability for Allan and quite helpful as well. As far as he knows, the Rokushiki are, Soru, Jeppo, Tekai, Shigen, Rankyaku, and Kamii. Soru and Jeppo, Moonwalk, are movement techniques, and Allan was more inclined to learn Jeppo. Soru is a high-speed movement technique that requires stepping on the ground a dozen times in less than a second, generating enough speed to disappear instantly and appear at the targeted location. But this can be achieved normally in Hunter x Hunter world by concentrating in the legs to increase speed. But Jeppo was different because stepping on the air isn't possible with just a bit of training in this world. Being able to fly wasn't something normal Nen users are able to do. And once Jeppo is mastered, it would be like gaining supremacy in the air. In a battle, gaining supremacy over the air is an overwhelming advantage. Even if he couldn't win, he would be able to run away without any trouble. Therefore, Allan directly chose the first option. He raised his head and patted his chest, don't worry, I will go with Gon to the exam, leave Gon to me. Allan, thank you. Mito was very grateful. Allan helped her more than anyone else in her life. No problem. Allan waved his hand. He looked calm, but he was about to jump from joy. Because just now, the system gave him his reward. Ding! You obtained Jeppo, Moonwalk, from the Marine's Rokushiki. In an instant, Allan learned the method to use Moonwalk. Time soon flew by as January arrived, leaving 1 week before the exam starts. Allan successfully registered online so he can enter the exam, but the problem was gone. Although Mito agreed that he could participate in the exam even if he didn't catch the master of the swamp, Gon stubbornly refused and vowed to catch the damn thing. Early in the morning, Allan went to Gon, who was fishing in the swamp. "Gon, did you catch it yet?" "Not yet." Gon replied with a tone full of depression. He didn't know what was going on, but the master of the swamp was nowhere to be seen. Allan even started doubting that it was here at all. "Gon, did you see the master of the swamp before?" Allan asked curiously. He still remembered how easily Gon managed to catch that big monster. But now, Gon wasn't successful, which meant something was wrong. Hearing Allan's question, Gon shook his head. "I didn't see it before. It is said to be a very large fish, more than 10 meters long. I heard that someone in the village fell into the swamp, but no one saw him after that. So, the rumor says that the master of the swamp is the one who ate him." "Who did you hear it from?" "Auntie Mito." "Mito?" Allan frowned. He is now a little skeptical about the master of the swamp. It could be just a fake story that Mito fabricated, so Gon won't participate in the hunter exam. That may be the reason why Gon still didn't catch it. "Gon, you don't suspect that maybe there is no master of the swamp in here?" Gon was taken aback before he replied firmly, "I believe Aunt Mito won't lie to me." "Too innocent." Allan sighed and said, "In that case, let me check if he is really down there." Although Gon didn't believe that Mito would lie to him, hearing Allan's suspicious, he couldn't help but wonder if it truly was there. After a while, he agreed, "Okay, what will you do, though?" "It's easy. I will just force it out." Allan immediately moved to the shore and squatted down, rolled his cuffs, and gently put his hand on the water's surface. A frost-like white air spread out of Allan's hand immediately and gradually froze the lake's surface. The surface wasn't the only thing affected, as the coldness traveled down deep into the lake. Within a moment, the entire lake was frozen. Like a clear gem, the ice was transparent while strong enough to support anyone who stands on top of it. Allan named this technique Senkiro Ice Field, 1000 kilometers ice field. Of course, with his current ability, he wouldn't dream of actually freezing 1000 kilometer, but it wasn't difficult to freeze a small swamp. He froze up to a kilometer away at best currently, but this already stunned Gon, who asked right away, "Allan, what is this ability? You froze the swamp." Allan didn't conceal anything as he explained with a smile, "This mine ability. It can freeze anything I come in contact with and turn it to ice." "Amazing." Gon had stars in his eyes as he looked at Allan in worship. But suddenly he remembered something and panicked, "Oh no, now that the swamp is frozen, how can we confirm that the master of the swamp in there or not?" Allan sighed and said, "Don't worry so much. If there is such a thing down there, it will come out. It will show up by itself. You will see." Seeing Allan's confidence, Gon started to believe that Allan could do it. They started waiting patiently. Before long, Allan started walking on the ice while looking down. Since the ice was crystal clear, he could see underwater easily. But the water wasn't as clear, and he could only see 3 or 4 meters down. He could only see dark green color deep down the swamp, which made him conclude that the swamp was 10 meters deep. After 10 minutes passed, Allan quickly stepped away from his position as he saw a huge shadow swimming quickly under the ice. Allan sneered, "It looks like there is indeed a master of the swamp." "Did you see it?" Gon was surprised. "Yeah." Allan nodded. He didn't make a mistake, he saw it, and indeed, it was a very big creature, but he wasn't sure if it is a fish or not. When confirmed it, Gon was cheerful, "Great, I know that Aunt Mito won't lie to me." He said to Allan, "Allan, what you just saw must be the master of the swamp." Allan was about to answer, but his pupil shrank and a huge creature crashed against the frozen surface of the swamp. Crack! The ice cracked due to the hard slam it received from the creature. Allan jumped away in a hurry and sighed, "It's dangerous." Once again, the ice was hit hard by the creature. Crack! A giant fish more than 10 meters long broke out of the ice. The fish was green, with scales forming an armor. It looked quite ferocious and nothing like a fish. Moreover, it has numerous legs, which helped it crawl. All of a sudden, its gaze was fixed on Allan and directly ran toward him. "Is that the master of the swamp?" Gon was taken aback. It was completely different from what he imagined. He almost vomited as he said, "It's so ugly." Allan also thought that this creature was ugly. Seeing it come running at him, he didn't evade it at all. Instead, he attacked it and froze it. "Gon, carry it back, whether it's the master of the swamp or not, I don't think that there is any bigger fish down there." Gon agreed. After all, his agreement with Mito was for him to catch the biggest fish in the swamp. So whether it was the one or not, it would be enough. "Here we go." Gon was very strong, so he easily picked the frozen master of the swamp and walked to the town looking for Mito. Allan breathed a sigh of relief as Gon completed his promise. Now, it's time to leave Whale Island. A week later, a ship slowly docked at the port of Whale Island. Unlike fishing boats, This ship was the one carrying hunter candidates that wanted to join the exam. Allan and Gon already departed early morning to get on board of the ship early. Both of them carried their luggage with some daily necessities inside, such as clothes that Mito prepared for them. When they were about to board the ship, Mito stood in front of them, intent on seeing them off. Don't worry, Aunt Mito. I will pay attention and stay safe. Furthermore, I will become a hunter, I promise. Seeing Gon so energetic, Mito looked at Allan and said, Allan, please take care of him. Well, you don't have to worry, he is my friend, and I take care of my friends, Allan said coolly. Gon was his first friend in this world, and he won't leave him alone. Also, take care of yourself, and if you have time, don't forget to visit. You're always welcome here. Of course, I will definitively come back. Allan shrugged, but he was avoiding meeting Mito's eyes. He had no attachment to Whale Island. If there isn't an emergency, he wouldn't want to come back here. He just didn't want to be blunt with Mito. Mito, why don't you come to take the exam yourself anyway? You already learned Nen and can protect yourself. Mito shook her head and declined Allan's invitation. She truly wanted to go, but she wasn't as strong as she wanted to be now, and that didn't allow her to go. Although she came in contact with Nen for a short while, she knew that the outside world was full of strong people, and she didn't want to burden Allan with her protection. Allan already understood what she was thinking about and said, if that's the case, then I won't force you. I hope by the next time I see you, you will be much stronger. Mito nodded and raised her head, I will train hard. And when I'm stronger, I will just drag both of you back here if you don't come back. Then, we will wait and see. After saying goodbye to Mito, Allan and Gon got on the ship headed toward the hunter exam's location. Many people gathered on the deck. From middle-aged men in their 40s to young boys like Gon, they all hoped to become hunters by the end of the exam. 90% of the participants were males, and the rest were females. Allan glanced at Gon and said after remembering his promise with Mito, Gon, don't run around. After saying this, Allan ignored Gon and looked at the candidates one by one. 10 minutes later, Allan shook his head as he didn't see the two candidates he was looking for. How could they not be here? In the show, the other two were here as well with Gon. He was talking about Kurapika and Leorio. Allan couldn't see them on the ship, which confused him. Did my existence change the plot? Because of me, the people who should be on this ship missed it. Allan started thinking about the after effect of such things happening in the future. As a transmigrator, his greatest advantage was his knowledge about the world, events, and characters. If the events were to change, his advantage would become small to nothing at all. Although he wasn't clear about everything, he still remembered major events, and Kurapika and Leorio missing now change many things. That meant that the hunter exam could be different from what he remembered in the show, which will affect him greatly. He was prepared for the same exam Gon passed in the show. Allan sighed, and although he was unhappy, he could do nothing about this. He could calculate each step carefully from now on. Where did Gon go? After a while, Allan glanced around him and realized that Gon disappeared. Hey, what is that kid doing? Suddenly someone shouted. Allan looked around before noticing Gon climbing the mast of the ship. Gon, Allan muttered to himself before he understood what's Gon doing, he must be observing the weather. Sure enough, after a while, Gon rushed down and shouted, everyone, be careful, there is a superstorm coming. Get in the cabin and stay there. Otherwise, you will be swept by the wind and wave and fall into the sea. As soon as they heard this, the examines on the deck couldn't calm down anymore. They stood up to look at the sky and sea, only to find the sea as calm as it could be and a blue sky without a single cloud all around them. Is there truly a storm coming? The weather looks good, but the wind is a bit strong, maybe. That kid isn't joking, is he? All the candidates talked to each other before someone asked, hey kid, how did you know that? Gon explained, because the wind is slightly wet, and also it tastes salty. Besides, the seagulls hovering above us are warning each other and fleeing away in groups. What are you talking about, kid? Do you understand bird language? All the candidates were surprised by Gon's words, while at this time, Allan's full attention fell onto someone else on the deck. Hearing that a storm was coming, many candidates started evacuating the deck and entering the cabin. Everyone was afraid of the storm, and since they were in the middle of nowhere, it would be the end of anyone who falls into the sea. Even if some of them still doubted Gon's words, they would rather take caution than being swept out of the ship. Wouch! Gon easily jumped down from the mast back on the deck and arrived beside Allan. Seeing him motionless, he became curious. Allan, why are you, dazed? A storm is coming. Let's get inside. But Allan seemed oblivious of Gon as he was staring at someone not far away. He thought that person was familiar and was trying really hard to remember him. The man had a pair of earrings embedded with blue gems, black hair combed back, a blue suit, and a book in his hand. The most eye-catching thing is the purple tattoo on the man's forehead. Allan concentrated on the tattoo before finally recognized the man. He was the leader of the Genei Ryuudan, Phantom Brigade, Krollo Lucilfer. I didn't expect him to be in this place, Allan muttered with a trembling heart. It seems he came here to participate in the hunter exam. Otherwise, he wouldn't be here on this ship. I truly didn't notice him before because I was looking for Kurapika and Leorio, or was he in the cabin before? Allan's brain was working at extreme speed. Looking back, he saw a woman that had short, straight, blonde hair reaching down to her neck. Her most prominent feature was her aquiline nose. Her attire consisted of a dark purple suit, reminiscent of a working woman's suit, which exposed much of her cleavage, and a pair of flat, pink shoes. She walked out of the cabin and went to Krollo's side. This was Pakunoda, from Genei Ryuudan. As for the big ugly guy, Allan did not doubt that it was Yuvajin from Genei Ryuudan. Allan greatly alarmed, Krollo was enough to give him a heart attack, and now 3 of the Genei Ryuudan were on board the ship. At this time, Krollo seemed to feel Allan's gaze and glanced at him, but Allan already moved his eyes away and said to Gon, "Gon, I'm sorry, I was just deep in thoughts." Gon looked at Allan helplessly and said, "It's okay. I'm already used to it. You often do the same when we were on the island." Allan smiled with guilt before he walked with Gon to the cabin. Only Krollo, Pakunoda and Yuvajin remained on the deck while everyone else entered the cabin. "What's the matter, Chief? Is there someone you know?" Yuvajin noticed Krollo's gaze and couldn't help asking. Krollo shook his head gently and said, "No. Maybe I'm thinking too much. Someone was staring at me just now, so I was concerned." "Chief, your presence is different from ordinary people, so, normally, people would look at you," Yuvajin said. "Compared to Chief, you're more eye-catching, Yuvo. You're so big and look wild." Pakunoda stated. Hearing this, Yuvajin's gaze on Pakunoda's proud twin peaks and counterattacked, "I can't be as noticeable as you are." Pakunoda sneered and warned, "Be careful, or I will pluck your eyes out." Yuvajin snarled and said, "Who told you to wear something so revealing? You just want people to look in that kind of clothes. Besides, you aren't losing anything even if people look at you." Pakunoda gritted her teeth and said, "What clothes I wear is my problem. I always dressed like this, and if you dare talk any more nonsense, I will pull your tongue out of your mouth." Yuvajin was about to fight back, but Krollo said coldly, "Enough." This simple word was enough for the two to stop before they even start. Krollo glanced at the two and said, "I don't want to be noticed when I participate in the exam this time. If someone finds out that Genei Ryuudan's members are participating, it will become troublesome, so don't fight." "Yes, we will pay attention to that," Yuvajin said. In the entire organization, only Krollo can make him obedient. At this time, Pakunoda asked, "Chief, all those guys are inside the cabin, is there a storm coming?" Krollo looked at the sea before he nodded, "Yeah, that kid with similar hair to a hedgehog is right. A terrible storm is coming." At this time, the sea breeze started changing. The seagulls were already out of sight, and the originally blue sky darkened. The situation changed really fast. Further away from them, a thin line connected the sky to the sea, and if closely observed, anyone can tell that a tornado was forming. The clouds in the sky become darker as time passed. Thunder roared like an angry beast out of nowhere, which made most candidates in the cabin tremble in fear. The most frightening experience is encountering a storm in the middle of the sea. Krollo closed his book and said, "Let's go into the cabin." Pakunoda and Yuvajin silently followed behind him as they entered the cabin. There were 3 layers to the cabin, with each one holding up to 200 people. And more than 700 candidates were on the ship, which made it overloaded. What made this even more exaggerated is that other than this ship, there are dozens or hundreds of other ships filled with candidates as well. The number of candidates for this exam reached is in the tens of thousands or even more. And the people who had a chance to reach the first exam is less than 10% of all of those. After this nightmare of a test, more than 90% of the candidates will be eliminated. Boom! Thunder roared, and rain fell heavily on the ship. The sea started raging, making the ship sway from side to side as waves slapped from each side. The candidates were immediately struggling with seasickness, and others were unable to keep their balancing and fell. Only a few weren't affected by the storm. On the first floor of the cabin, the long hedgehog-haired Yuvajin looked at the groaning candidates with a grin and sneered, "What a bunch of weaklings. You dare participate in the exam, and you can't even withstand this." In contrast, Pakunoda and Krollo kept quiet. On the second floor, the same situation was occurring. All the candidates were whining, and only Gon and Allan weren't affected. After a storm this strong, only a few out of the 700 candidates were eligible to continue the exam. Only 5 candidates retained their consciousness and weren't affected by the storm. When Allan and Gon went out toward the deck, they passed by Krollo and the others walking out of the first floor. Allan already expected them to be alright after the storm, so he just glanced at them before retracting his gaze. He just accompanied Gon to the hunter exam to help him. He didn't want to deal with dangerous people like the Genei Ryuudan. So he didn't say anything, but Gon didn't as usual, did the stupidest thing, and waved at them, "You're all amazing. It seems that the storm didn't affect you at all." Allan almost face-palmed as he looked at Gon and shook his head. This kid doesn't know that those three are cold-blooded demons who killed without remorse. Fortunately, Krollo ignored Gon and went straight to the deck. Yuvajin walked behind Krollo and unexpectedly said, "I thought that except for the three of us, the others weakling on this ship wouldn't make it. I didn't expect 2 out of all the trash to be somewhat decent." Krollo calmly said, "There are too many people participating, and 2 slightly stronger candidates are normal." Pakunoda said, "That kid with green clothes was cute. I couldn't help responding to him just now." Allan directly reached the deck and waved to Gon not far away. "What's the matter, Allan?" "Gon, listen closely, don't mess with them, okay?" Allan reminded, which puzzled Gon, "Mess with them? No, I just said hello to them, but they just ignored me." "Anyway, don't talk to them," Allan said seriously. He knew Gon's character very well. He was just too innocent for his own good. He also had the kind of personality that let him befriend people the same age and even much older than him. In case he befriended the Genei Ryuudan, Gon would either be affected by them or become a dark Gon. If the person's heart was innocent, it could be tainted by darkness really quickly. Once Gon fall on the wrong path, he will become the real final boss in this world. Allan didn't want Gon going astray. He was his friend, after all. He didn't want him to go make friends with such dangerous people. And he did promise Mito to take care of Gon. So Allan was determined to prevent Gon from contacting the Genei Ryuudan. At this time, the long-lost system's voice echoed in Roha's brain with 2 choices for him to choose from. Ding! Please make the following choices. 1. Prevent Gon from contacting the Genei Ryuudan. Reward, Kanbunshoku, Observation, Haki, Novice. 2. Help Gon contact the Genei Ryuudan. Reward, Busashoku, Armament, Haki, Novice. Allan scratched his head as he was in front of a difficult choice. Whether it was armament or observation Haki, he loved both techniques. They were some of his favorite skills. But at this stage, Allan is more inclined to get observation Haki as it was more useful to him. His reason was very simple. Armament Haki was the ability to enhance both offensive and defensive physical attacks. That was all, and with Nen, he can use Ten, Shu, and Ken to get the same effect as armament Haki. But observation Haki was different. It enhances one's 5 senses greatly and detects threats as well as reads the enemy's movement. It was a great perception skill. Therefore, Allan immediately chose the first option, and even without the system, Allan would prevent Gon from contacting them anyway. Allan once again was in a daze, and Gon could only wait patiently as always. Gon looked at Allan and sighed, "Allan is really a weird person. He was clearly talking to me, then he suddenly stops and become dazed." As Allan returned to his senses, he saw Gon looking at him with a helpless expression and smiled, "Ah, I'm sorry, Gon, I was lost in thoughts again. It's okay. I'm already used to it." Gon looked at him as if nothing was strange about Allan anymore. Allan sighed helplessly. Every time the system gives him a choice, he would look as if he was dazed. He was doing a multiple-choice question, so can you blame him? "By the way, Gon, do you remember what I told you? Don't talk or mess with those 3. Allan glanced at them and said with a low voice. "Why?" Gon was puzzled. "Well, they are bad people. Do you understand?" Allan seemed as if he was coaxing a child. Gon scratched his head before glancing at Krollo and the others and said, "Allan, how do you know that they are bad people? Do you know them?" "Of course, it's not possible for me to tell you that I do know them very well." Allan shook his head and said, "I don't, but it's just my instinct." "Instinct?" Gon looked confused. Allan sighed and said, "For example, some people's appearance may be fierce, but they are kind-hearted, while other people looked kind, but they are really dangerous and scary." Gon suddenly understood and said, "In other words, you think those 3 people are dangerous, right?" Allan nodded and smiled, "You really can understand. Well, Aunt Mito told me to listen to you when we are outside. Since you don't want me to talk to them, then I won't." Allan nodded and was extremely happy with Gon's obedience, which made him more at ease. Ding! You successfully prevented Gon from contacting the Genei Ryuudan. Reward has been claimed, Observation Haki, Novice. In an instant, Allan felt his body transform, and his 5 senses greatly improve. Is this Observation Haki? Allan's excitement shot up the roof as he felt the change in his body. Now, he had a clear understanding of Observation Haki. There were 3 main points to this change. First, his perception improved greatly. He can now detect the presence of a faraway target. Second, his hearing improved immensely, and now he can hear the breathing sound and heartbeats of his target. Third, all of his senses were enhanced. This didn't refer to a single organ, but it was an overall improvement. When there is a threat to his life, even without seeing the threat came from, and locate it accurately by listening to the heartbeats. If he raises his sense to a higher level, he would be able to even predict the future for a short time. Observation HxH increased perception in general. Everything that helps with perception is improved to the point of transcending a human's senses. This ability is linked to the spirit and mental fortitude of the user. The stronger the mental power is, the stronger the HxH will be, and the more focused it gets, the more accurate I would be as a result. Allan focused a little and activated his observation HxH. An intangible and invisible sphere spread all around with him in the center. The observation HxH was similar to the advanced Nen application, N, but the difference is that observation HxH didn't use Nen, can't be detected, and also had a wider range. But now, Allan discovered that his observation HxH could only cover 10 meters radius, which he directly linked to it being at a novice level. Beyond those 10 meters, Allan couldn't feel anything. This is a bit embarrassing. Allan was embarrassed because his current N can reach a distance of 20 meters easily. In other words, his current observation HxH isn't as practical as his N. However, since the observation HxH doesn't use Nen, unlike N, he can keep it active at all times when he fights. A fairly elderly man with a short and stocky build came out of the cabin holding a bottle of wine in his hand. He glanced at Allan and Gon before looking at Crollo and the other three. He took a mouthful of wine before saying, "Haha, it seems that only the 5 could handle the storm." He took the bottle once again into his mouth before saying again, "I'm the captain of this ship. You can call me Captain or Captain San. You guys now tell me your names." His words sounded like he was ordering them, which irritated Ryuudan. "I don't care that you're the captain, why should I tell you my name?" The old man took another mouthful of wine before glancing at Ryuudan like a drunk. He, what a grumpy guy. "If you don't want to tell me your name, then don't, but don't regret it later." He glanced away toward Allan and said, "You too, you don't need to answer, but like him, don't regret it later. This drunk is trying to scare us. Let me see what you can do." Ryuudan said disapprovingly. If he didn't consider the exam and his chief's words about not causing trouble, he would have just thrown the old man into the sea to become shark's food. Crollo stared at the old man as if he was thinking about something, but he didn't state his name. Allan, on the other hand, was staring at the old man and already guessed his identity. He is probably a temporary examiner from the Hunter Association. But a temporary examiner is an examiner nonetheless. Whether they pass the test or not depends on his words. If he offends him now, he will be likely eliminated in the next exam, and that's why the old man warned Ryuudan and said he would regret it. Thinking about this, Allan directly stepped forward and introduced himself. "Hello, Captain San, my name is Allan Yeager, just call me Allan." After he said this, he pointed at Gon and said, "This is my little brother, Gon." "Well, okay, I will remember you, Allan boy, and Gon boy." Compared to the violent Ryuudan, the old man was satisfied with Allan's polite answer. Gon, on the other hand, heard Allan changing his name and looked at Allan with confusion and whispered, "Allan, isn't your full name Allan Nefertari? When did it change to Aaron Yeager? Which one is the real one?" "Idiot, both of them are made up." Allan thought, but he wouldn't dare say that. Instead, he leaned toward Gon's ear and whispered, "Gon, the world isn't a good place. People's hearts aren't always good. Of course, I can't use my real name in such a public place, especially my last name. That's why I made a pseudonym for our safety." "Oh, I understand." Gon said as if he realized something and said, "Allan, you're really very reliable." Allan smiled with a guilty conscience and said, "Really? Then you should always listen to my words." Gon nodded quickly and said, "Yes, can I also use a pseudonym, for example Sharpei Gon?" "Sharpei? Sharpei Gon?" Allan was taken aback. "Yeah, don't you think it sounds cool? Just like a foreign name." Gon said smugly. He felt that he was so smart now that he could think of such a name. Allan didn't speak as he looked at Gon blankly. He wasn't able to understand how Gon found a dog's breed as cool. It was a dog's breed, for God's sake. Seeing Gon still very proud of himself, Allan couldn't help ask him, "Where did you learn that name? Is there such a strange name in this world?" Gon shook his head and smiled, I don't know if there is such a surname, but the village chief had a Sharpei. I didn't expect it to go so well with my name." Allan was unable to complain, but in the end, he sternly said, "Gon, the name Sharpei Gon sounds like a stray dog's name. You can't use it as a pseudonym." "Why?" Gon was hit in the head by Allan. He shut up and looked at Allan, "Then what pseudonym should I use?" Allan patted him on the shoulder and said, "Just use your name, Gon." "No, I want a pseudonym like Allan." Seeing Gon's stubbornness raising, Allan thought for a bit before he said, "Well, then how about Cockroach Gon?" "Cockroach Gon?" Gon's eyes lit up as he nodded, that's a good name, slightly better than Sharpei Gon. Allan was speechless. Why is this guy so attached to the dog's breed? But now, he could finally sigh in relief. Fortunately, Allan watched a lot of animes, otherwise, he wouldn't be able to get such a pseudo-name anytime soon. Allan and Gon looked at the old man and said in unison, what is it? The old man once again took a mouthful of wine and said, why do you want to be hunters? What is your purpose? I will answer first. Gon happily raised his hand and said, I come to take the test, then go and find my father. So, your father is a hunter? Yeah. Gon nodded as stars appeared in his eyes. The old man looked at his eyes and thought, his eyes are so clear, but his path will be full of thorns. Then said to Gon sincerely, I hope you find your father soon. Thank you, Captain San. The old man looked at Allan and said, what about you, Allan boy? I have already said the reason. The old man was taken aback and asked, when did you say that? He shook the wine bottle and hiccuped. He isn't that drunk to forget about something just happened. Allan said, in the place where I grew up, my name has an extraordinary meaning. Jäger is pronounced as Jäger, Jäger, and that means hunter in German. Allan, means honor in German. Allan Jäger means that I want to be an honorable hunter, which is a great hunter who is admired for his great achievement. That is my goal. Hearing this, the old man rubbed his beard thoughtfully before he said, that's really a great name. In contrast, Gon was stunned hearing this. Allan, I didn't think your goal was that grand. Gon felt that his purpose of becoming a hunter was too small compared to Allan. Allan patted Gon's shoulder and wanted so much to tell Gon that you're too naive, that the honorable hunter this is just BS. The old man looked at Allan and Gon before he cleared his throat and said, ahem. Now, I will announce that both of you have passed the test on the ship, and I will take you to the first test's location. Hey, we qualified. Gon was taken aback by the announcement. Allan smiled as he was right. The old man was an examiner, so he just explained to Gon, the hunter exam started the moment we boarded the ship. The storm was a test, and Captain San is the examiner of the test. He asked our names and reasons to become a hunter to give his report to the review committee to determine whether we are qualified to pass or not. Really, Allan? You're so smart. You discovered this from the start. Gon looked at his mysterious brother. Allan's mouth curved into a smile before he said, it's nothing. As long as you pay attention to details, you can make the same guess. At this moment, Ryuudan, who was standing on the deck, called, hey, old fart, wait. The old man frowned and said with displeasure, young man, keep a clean mouth. You're only allowed to call me, Captain, understand? Who cares about you? Ryuudan glanced at Allan and Gon and said, you just said that both of them are qualified. What about the three of us? The old man glanced at them, took another mouthful of the seemingly endless bottle of wine, and said, I'm sorry, the three of you are eliminated. What did you say? Ryuudan was beyond angry. The old man explained, although the three of you successfully passed the storm and are quite strong, when I asked you something, you didn't put me in your eyes at all, and didn't give me your names. Especially you, the big guy. You even dared call me an old fart, and I hate disrespectful people the most. Therefore, the three of you are eliminated, and 90% of the blame is on you. So come again next year, and I hope you won't run into me again. Otherwise, you would have to take the exam the year after that. Bastard, you want to die. Ryuudan's killing intent emerged out as he appeared just in front of the old man. Grabbed his threateningly, old fart, I will give you a last chance, if you dare to eliminate the three of us, I will immediately throw you into the sea to become food for sharks. Not far, Gon's sense of justice overwhelmed him, and he almost rushed forward to help. Allan quickly put his hand on Gon and said, Gon, don't be impulsive. But, that big guy said he would throw Captain San into the sea. I can't just stay and watch. Gon was really anxious and worried about the old man. He turned to Allan and said, Allan, you are right. Those people are really bad guys. They want to kill Captain San. Allan raised his head and glanced at the old man who didn't seem to care about Ryuudan's intimidation at all. It seemed like he already accepted his death long ago. Therefore, he wasn't intimidated by Ryuudan's threat and said fearlessly, I'm an old man, I lived enough, so feel free to do whatever you want. Either way, you're not passing the exam, especially you, rude boy. Originally, Allan didn't want to get involved, but Gon was just so kind-hearted that he didn't want to see anyone getting killed in front of him and do nothing. Had Allan let him go, he would have already rushed to fight Ryuudan. In this case, Allan's choices were limited. There are only two choices for him, one is to help the old man, and as a result, he would have to fight Ryuudan and maybe even the other two, which will put him at a great disadvantage, and he may die just to save the old man. Such a result without any reward wasn't exactly his kind of deals. The second choice is not to help, but as a result, Gon would hate him, but he would avoid clashing with the Gen Ei Ryuudan. But he couldn't bear the thought of Gon staring coldly at him after this. So what should he do? Allan struggled with this choice. But as if the system heard that there was a choice, it directly intervened. Ding! Please make a choice. 1. Make a move and help the captain and defeat Ryuudan. Reward, Rokushi Technique, Rank Yaku, Novice. 2. It doesn't matter if you don't help, even if the captain dies, just be yourself. Reward, Rokushiki Technique, Tekai, Novice. Just when Allan already made his choice, Ryuudan received an unyielding answer from the old man, and his anger reached the pinnacle. Hey, since you're not afraid of death, then go feed the fishes. Without waiting even for a second, Ryuudan threw the old man into the sea. Even though the storm did stop, the sea was still raging and full of waves, and if anyone falls, he will die. Seeing the captain being thrown down, Gon suddenly shouted anxiously, Allan, let me go. I'm going to rescue Captain San. Gon took the fishing rod in his hand, which was his exclusive weapon, with the simple idea of catching the captain with it and pull him back into the ship. This was his only way to save the captain. At this moment, Gon said seriously, Gon, leave it to me. As he said this, Allan directly jumped down at a great speed. And as if defying gravity, he started stepping on the air. Moonwalk. This was the first time Allan got to use moonwalk, so he was slightly scared currently. After all, if he failed and fell, he would die, so this was no joke. But moonwalk proved to be easy to use. As long as he maintains balance and uses the air as his support, he didn't have to worry about falling down the sea. Wow, Allan, you're flying. Gon on the ship was extremely surprised. Ryuudan was the same. He didn't expect Allan to have the ability to fly. The power to defy gravity and fly in the air was an eye-opener. Damn it! Where did that kid come from? Ryuudan clenched his fists as he stared at Allan. He felt provoked by Allan for rescuing the old man. Puff! 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 Allan rushed toward the old man as fast as he could while kicking the air. Every step will leave slight friction behind that made a slight puff sound. The sound he produced while stepping on the air was like a popping of a balloon. When the old man was about to reach the water, Allan grabbed him by the collar. Hi, okay, I caught you. Allan breathed a sigh of relief and kept stepping on the air to prevent his fall. Because Allan couldn't achieve true flight, he couldn't stop moving in the air, or else he would fall. Okay, time to go back. Puff! 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 Allan successfully returned toward the ship with the old man in his hand. The old man fell on the deck without registering what just happened. Allan, you're amazing. Gon walked up and looked at Allan with admiration. Allan gave Gon a wry smile. He didn't realize how incredible it was to walk on air until he stepped back on the ship. The old man stood up and said, Allan, I owe you my life. If there is anything I can help you with in the future, just tell me, and I will definitively help you even if I die. Allan was about to respond, but an angry shout interrupted him, Boy, you should stick your nose where it doesn't belong. Allan looked up and saw Ryuudan staring at him angrily. Not far behind him, Krollo and Pakunoda stared at him as well. They stared at him with a wait-and-see attitude. Allan wasn't afraid at all. Cowering back will only make Ryuudan more arrogant. So, he stepped forward and sneered, Excuse me, you're just a big guy who likes to bully an old man like Captain San. What did you say? Ryuudan furiously looked at Allan. He was even more angered if that was possible. I said, you're just a bully who picks on an old man, aren't you ashamed? Good. Ryuudan squeezed his fist as his face was full of killing intent, I will kill you. Allan was already prepared to fight, so once Ryuudan finished talking, he used Moonwalk to rush forward. Moonwalk wasn't limited to flying. It can be deployed on land as well to move faster. Ryuudan was startled. He didn't expect Allan to take the initiative to attack, but his reaction was slow at all. He immediately raised his fist and punched Allan. Allan ducked sideways, avoiding the punch, but a hole appeared on the deck as a result. Boom! Taking advantage of Ryuudan's open guard, Allan directly sent a kick to his neck. The force behind the kick sent Ryuudan away at a great speed. Damn it! Ryuudan put his hands on the deck to stop his slide and cracked his neck. He only felt slightly sore due to the kick, but he was extremely startled by it nonetheless. Such a strong kick, this kid isn't easy. He can use Nin. Although Ryuudan was confident in his physical defenses, that kick still made him feel threatened. Boy, you successfully angered me. With Gyo activated, Allan could see Ryuudan's red Nin explode out of his body. So strong! Allan complimented. In the show, Ryuudan was an enhancer type, first-class Nin user. Not only could he stop bullets with his teeth, but he can also even redirect a rocket and even blow armored vehicles with his bare hands. Even after when the Nostrate's bodyguard used his sword along with Nin to pierce Ryuudan's body, it could only go 2 inches before it stopped and broke at the end. Allan deliberately targeted Yuvijan's neck because it was one of the few parts that should be relatively fragile, but he underestimated Yuvijan's defense. Although he seemed to have kicked Yuvijan away, it didn't cause him any harm at all. And with that, Allan realized that he wouldn't be able to compete with Yuvijan with just physical power. In other words, a head-on fight isn't possible. Ordinary attacks won't work on him, and even if he used his strongest physical attack, it would slightly damage Yuvijan at best. And if Yuvijan landed a punch on him, he would be left with bone fractures or even become a cripple. There is still a big gap between their abilities, but Allan's attacks weren't limited to physical ones. Although he was at a disadvantage up close, he still had a few aces up his sleeve. Seeing Yuvijan dashing toward him, Allan sneered and activated his observation haki. Allan managed to see the trajectory of Yuvijan's attack with observation haki. When the punch seemed close to hitting Allan, for some reason, it hit nothing. Yuvijan was startled because Allan was standing in the same place as if he didn't move. His body didn't move, but his head leaned to the side. At this moment, Yuvijan was shocked by Allan's brazen way of avoiding his attack. "Is this all you've got?" Allan mocked aloud. He was extremely frightened when he did that, and if he wasn't using observation haki, that punch would have killed him. But he just taunted Yuvijan to make him angrier and lead him into making mistakes. He wanted Yuvijan to attack him irrationally, so he could take advantage of his rage and counter-attack. Allan's taunt worked a little too well as Yuvijan laughed angrily. "What an arrogant guy, do you think that you're so great just for avoiding a punch? If you think that this is all of my power, then your death will be quite the ugly one." He squeezed his fist and said, "But sorry, I only need a third of my power to kill you." Yuvijan's face resembled a fierce wild animal with a wicked smile. Allan's mouth raised slightly. "Do you want to kill me with a third of your power? You have greatly underestimated my power." He raised 4 fingers and continued to taunt Yuvijan. "Then I will use 10% of my power against you." 10%. Yuvijan frowned. Allan smiled faintly and said, "That's 40%, you idiot." Yuvijan's anger reached a new high, but he suppressed himself as he looked at Allan with a sneer. "I hope you're as strong as your mouth, otherwise I will tear you and your mouth apart. I also hope your fist is stronger, or else, you've got no chance to even hit me." Allan mocked again. Currently, they were 2 meters apart and within each other's reach. The two of them seemed in a staring contest, but actually, they were contemplating their next course of action. They were waiting for the best moment to attack. Yuvijan was 100% confident that he can overwhelm Allan with speed and power within such a short distance. Without further thoughts, Yuvijan punched Allan's head. Allan quickly tilted his head to the right, avoiding the fist. The wind howled beside Allan's cheek as Yuvijan's punch passed by. Once again, Yuvijan was stunned as his fist for the second time couldn't touch its target. "How are you?" Yuvijan's confidence turned into shock within seconds. He was shocked because, this time, he was just 2 meters away from his opponent, but the boy was able to avoid his punch the same way as before. "Damn it! I don't believe you can avoid all of my punches." This time, he no longer aimed at Allan's head. Instead, he aimed at his chest. Yuvijan's physical strength was tremendous to the point that he could shatter rocks and pierce iron plate without Nan's use. If such a punch was to hit an ordinary person, he would die on the spot. And even those who can use Ren or Ken for defense are at risk. In the past 10 years, at least 1,000 people died under his punches. 800 of the 1,000 corpses were described as killed by a beast, not a human with claw marks and teeth marks. With Allan's provocation, Yuvijan's punches were already filled with Nen, which was several times stronger than his normal punch. Because of the power behind it, a violent sound resonated from it as it moved across the air. Seeing the punch move toward his chest, Allan immediately stepped aside and barely avoided it. "Did I miss again?" Yuvijan's surprise kept growing as he didn't expect Allan to avoid his last punch within such a close distance. It's as if the boy already knew where the punch was moving. It's like the boy predicted and knew where to move to avoid his punch before he even attacked. He squinted his eyes before looked at Allan suspiciously and thought, "This guy. Did he see through my attack?" In order to verify his guess, Yuvijan punched again and again like a raging storm. With the help from his observation haki, Allan avoided each punch without much effort. Or that's what it looked like, but in fact, Allan needed to concentrate really hard to avoid Yuvijan's flurry of attacks as his observation haki was only at the novice level. If his observation haki was of a higher level, he wouldn't need to concentrate as much, and he would be able to counter-attack without much problem. Although Allan seemed calm, he was very focused as he was facing someone so strong. He didn't dare to get careless even for a second, or else he would die. Krollo was watching the fight without any change in expression at first, but as Allan kept on avoiding Yuvijan's attacks, a faint light appeared in his eyes. "It's not easy. That guy is avoiding Yuvijan's attacks with the smallest amount of movement possible." Pakunoda heard this and became curious. "Chief, is that guy predicting Yuvijan's attacks?" Krollo nodded and said, "Not just that, he is trying to consume Yuvijin's power while dodging his attacks with the smallest movement and not counter-attacking. But that's not a sign of weakness or fear. He is trying to save his energy and stay on standby, waiting for the right moment to counter-attack. He is really a calm-headed guy. In contrast, Yuvijin's attacks are wide and full of openings. Each punch was simple and used wide movement, which consumes several times more energy than his opponent. Over time, even if Yuvijin had the advantage when it comes to Nin, once he gets tired, the gap between them will narrow, and maybe that guy can even overpower him. Hearing Crollo's analyses, Pakunoda was a little bit surprised. I didn't expect Yuvijin to encounter this kind of opponent. He isn't good at dealing with such strategic enemies. Do I need to go there and help? Crollo shook his head slightly and said, no, Yuvijin's power isn't that simple. Furthermore, I'm a little bit interested in that guy. So, let's just take this opportunity to observe his battle with Yuvijin. Hearing this, Pakunoda looked at Allan and paid more attention to the fight. There are not many guys that can catch the chief's eyes. Does chief want to bring him into the group? If he can survive, we can consider getting acquainted with him. Crollo smiled with a calculating expression. At this moment, Yuvijin turned his head and looked at Crollo with a startled expression. Chief is smiling. His simple mind came to a weird conclusion, it must be because I haven't finished the battle just yet. And now, the chief is laughing at me. In previous fights, Yuvijin always crushed his targets with his overwhelming strength. He was known for finishing his targets quickly, but now facing Allan, he couldn't fully use his advantage in strength. The guy seemed to predict every attack he launched with ease, making him miss every single punch. Yuvijin stared at Allan with anger as he said, damn it, I will get serious now. Suddenly, an astonishing aura surrounded Yuvijin like a violent volcano. His Nin was extremely powerful that it made Allan think he was facing an angry beast. Very scary. Not far behind, Gon and the old man felt the ferocity Yuvijin was emanating and were quite shocked. Although the old man didn't practice Nin, he could feel that Yuvijin was currently more terrifying than a beast. Gon didn't learn Gyo yet, so he couldn't see Nin around Yuvijin's body, but he knew that the aura was stronger than anything he felt before. Allan, I will help you. Gon took a deep breath and suppressed his fear. He stepped forward to help Allan and fight alongside him. After all, he was the reason Allan had to fight Yuvijin in the first place. If he didn't insist on saving the old man, Allan wouldn't be fighting Yuvijin right now. Therefore, Gon knew that he should be fighting with Allan. However, with Yuvijin's aura, Gon almost couldn't move forward. His Nin is just too powerful. Gon was startled and stared at Allan's back and thought, it turns out that Allan was fighting such a powerful opponent, no wonder he told me to not contact them. The kind of Nin he was using is changing the atmosphere even. I probably wouldn't be able to even scratch him. Gon, don't come over, just stay with Captain San, Allan shouted without looking back. Facing a monster like Yuvijin prevented him from relaxing even for a second. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to react even with observation haki. Simultaneously, Allan's Nin exploded out of his body to try and match Yuvijin, but comparing the two, it was apparent that Yuvijin was stronger. Allan. The old man noticed the situation, hurriedly pulled Gon into the wheelhouse, and said, little Gon, don't worry. I believe that Allan can handle it. We need to stay away, so he doesn't get distracted. Gon nodded. He already knew that it was not a battle he could join, and it would only add the burden on Allan if he did. But if Allan can't handle it, he was ready to go and lay his life helping him. Yuvijin wasn't in a hurry to attack. He looked at the Nin Allan was releasing and smiled disdainfully, heh. I think you started training in Nin for 3 or 4 years at most. I started training more than 10 years ago, so you're not my opponent at all. Really? Allan's mouth curved into a smile as he sarcastically said, you've been training for so many years, and you still rely on pure Nin to win? Although your Nin is indeed stronger than mine and is much larger in quantity than mine, certain variables are in a Nin battle. Because of that, victory is never absolute. Take our situation for example, even if you are stronger than me, you will only win if you manage to hit me, which you still didn't. If your fist can't touch me, then all you have is brute strength that means nothing at all. A vein bulged out on Yuvijin's forehead as he heard Allan's sarcasm and angrily said, do you think you can escape a full power punch from me? He sneered and said, let's see you try avoiding my full power punch. Allan's expression became serious as he thought, is that idiot going to use a special attack finally? In the show, Yuvijin was a top-notch enhancer. Even if he was faced with hundreds of people, he would kill them with his bare hands. His Big Bang Impact should be his strongest attack, which he used to punch and destroy Worm, one of the 4 shadow beasts who was deep underground along with a large piece of land he was hiding in. It's just a superpowered punch. Chief, what is Yuvijin going to do? Do you want me to stop him? Pakunoda couldn't help ask Crollo. Crollo shook his head, no, I want to see what happens to that guy facing Yuvijin's Big Bang Impact. Will he stay alive or die? This is interesting. But, if we do that, we will be eliminated from the exam. It doesn't matter, the hunter exam is held every year, but it's not common to find such an interesting guy. Hearing this, Pakunoda stopped talking, and her eyes fell on Allan and Ryuudan, just like Krollo. At this moment, Ryuudan raised his right hand, which was clenched, and started gathering an astonishing amount of aura in it. He knew that if Ryuudan's fist fell on the ship, the entire ship would be destroyed. By then, all the people on the ship had no chance of survival. Although Allan didn't think of himself as a good person, this was a battle between him and Ryuudan. Involving innocent bystanders isn't something he was willing to do, so he wouldn't allow Ryuudan to destroy the ship. Allan knew that he could avoid the punch with his observation haki, but he wasn't willing to watch hundreds of life destroyed just like that. So his only path was to resist this punch. Who dot? Allan inhaled and said, I can only try that. As soon as he said this, a cold aura started radiating around him, and the surrounding temperature started dropping at an alarming rate. The white frosty air spread from his feet, directly moving toward Ryuudan and freezing the ship's surface in the process. Everyone could see the deck's surface become white before it was turned into a crystal-clear layer of ice. Ryuudan was extremely surprised. The cold air crawled on the deck and reached his legs. Ice started forming around them quickly before moving to his upper body, trying to turn him into an ice sculpture. The coldness already invaded Ryuudan's body, which made him grunt before he directly swung his fist toward Allan. His feet were covered in ice, and he couldn't get closer to Allan, so he directly sent his fist to try and break the ice. Although he didn't use his full power, it was at least 70% of it. When he tried to break free, it was already too late because once again, Allan struck quickly, and his cold nin erupted like a storm. Ryuudan knew that he was in a bad situation and attacked the ice with everything he had. A huge amount of nin shot out of Ryuudan, shattering the ice covering his feet as he lunged at Allan like a tiger. Allan wasn't afraid of danger. He was relying on his observation haki to avoid any and all punches Ryuudan sent toward him. His actions seemed dangerous, but everything was within his calculation. Ryuudan was extremely angry as he punched non-stop, vowing to kill Allan. Allan just kept dodging left and right. Every attack was seen through using his observation haki. Ryuudan finally changed his attacks by jumping in the air then locking into Allan before dropping down with a Superman punch. Allan already noticed this and took action to resist. He created 2 ice cones in the air to stop Ryuudan's attack. Humph, an ant trying to shake a tree. Ryuudan snorted coldly before colliding with the ice cones breaking them apart, and continued toward Allan. As Ryuudan was about to succeed in hitting Allan for the first time, the latter's figure flashed and avoided again. Boom! 1/3 of the deck was destroyed, and splinters flew everywhere. Allan's forehead was covered in cold sweat as he floated in the air. It was really a close call. Fortunately, he used the ice cones to reduce the damage, or else the entire ship would have sunk. Get down here! Ryuudan roared as he jumped toward Allan. Allan sneered as he thought, what does he think he is doing? I have moonwalk, you idiot! I'm superior mid-air. Allan immediately rushed forward toward Ryuudan, who was taken aback by this. He didn't expect Allan would take the initiative to get close to him, so he instantly sent a punch toward Allan. Allan's observation haki already predicted Ryuudan's attack and helped him avoid it with his moonwalk and kicked Ryuudan mercilessly. Since he was in the air, Ryuudan blocked with his hand as his body started to fall. Allan predicted that Ryuudan would block and instantly kicked with his other leg that connected without a problem. Boom! Ryuudan was shot down like a cannonball toward the ship and collided hardly. Allan didn't want Ryuudan to record, so he directly moved down with moonwalk while pointing his fingers at Ryuudan. Instantly, sharp icicles formed in the air and struck down Ryuudan as fast as lightning. Ah dot! A pained cry escaped Ryuudan's mouth as the icicles that were harder than steel touched his chest. He looked down and saw the icicles embedded into his chest and blood gushing out from his wounds. Ryuudan was shocked and exclaimed, "What? Blood?" Allan was happy. His attack landed as he expected. Of course, if an ordinary sharp object hit Ryuudan, there is no way it could penetrate his defense. Still, since Allan added the ice element, the icicle's penetrative power increased immensely, and even a body like steel wouldn't be able to resist. Krollo smiled slightly and said, he did a good job breaking Ryuudan's defense and hurt him. Indeed. Pakunoda felt the same way, Ryuudan's body can't be even hurt by rockets. Other than physical power, enhancers had a unique advantage in recovery. They can use nin to accelerate their recovery. Right now, the damage done by Allan's blow was already healing. Ryuudan's vitals weren't hurt at all, but this injury made Ryuudan feel shame. He looked at Allan in midair and angrily roared, "Get down here!" Ryuudan had no way to fly, and this meant he couldn't catch Allan at all. Even if he relied on his powerful legs to jump at Allan, Allan would have full control of the situation once he is there. So, even though he was furious, he didn't lose his mind and jump. Suddenly, a trident formed in Allan's hand before he swooped down toward Ryuudan. Damn it! Ryuudan shouted and punched with his right fist. Boom! The collision between the trident and the punch sent shockwave all around the ship while breaking a few waves apart. Crack! The trident couldn't withstand Ryuudan's punch and instantly broke down. But this caused Ryuudan's punch to almost freeze from the cold energy released as the trident broke. Allan felt his hand numbing from the last collision. The two of them were evenly matched in the last exchange. But in the blink of an eye, Ryuudan lunged forward with great speed toward Allan. Allan was startled. He didn't expect Ryuudan's speed to increase so much. It was already too late to avoid Ryuudan's punch, and he could only try to resist by punching back. Boom! With the head-on attack, Allan was immediately launched back with great ferocity due to Ryuudan's attack's mighty force. The latter took advantage of this and instantly chased after Allan with full power, adamant about finishing him off. Allan could tell that he was in extreme danger and reacted quickly by forming a huge ice wall in front of him. As soon as the ice wall formed, Ryuudan slammed it and broke it apart. Boom! As soon as the wall broke, small crystal-like ice pieces scattered in the air. At the same time, Allan struck Ryuudan with an uppercut that landed firmly on the latter's jaw. In that punch, Allan applied Ryu, which concentrates Nen on any part of the body. He used almost 70% of his Nen on that punch, hoping to deal the most amount of damage. Ryuudan was hit so hard that he felt that his jaw was about to split, causing him to lose consciousness for a second. Allan stretched one hand and shouted, "Freeze!" The cold Nen erupted out of Allan's body and directly covered Ryuudan, turning him into an ice sculpture. Who dot? Allan exhaled loudly as this was his first serious battle in this world. He didn't expect an elite just as he left Whale Island. Had he not received observation haki, and moonwalk, he stood no chance in front of someone like Ryuudan even if he relied on his ice. Fortunately, after some struggle, he managed to freeze him. "Allan, you are amazing. You actually froze that guy." Gon immediately shouted joyfully. "This is just temporary." Allan frowned. He knew that he couldn't completely freeze someone of Ryuudan's level with his current power. Hearing this, Gon said in shock, "Then what if he comes out of the ice?" Allan shrugged and said, "What else can I do? I will just keep freezing him." Gon was taken aback. This method seemed simple and somewhat stupid. But it was the most practical. Since he can't kill his opponent, trapping him was the best solution. Crollo and Pakunoda looked at the frozen Ryuudan, and their faces changed slightly. "What should we do, Chief? Do you want me to go and help?" Pakunoda asked. Pakunoda was about to reply, but he heard a sudden crack and saw cracks started spreading on the ice covering Ryuudan. "Retreat! The ice is about to break." Allan was startled and quickly pulled Gon back. In the next instant, a bang resounded as ice shards flew around. Ryuudan currently seemed like a snow tiger breaking through ice. His Nen erupted stronger than before. But although he seemed fierce, his breathing was hard and looked really tattered. Ryuudan broke the ice, but he was somewhat slow and allowed the cold force to invade his body. At this moment, he was trying to use his Nen to expel the cold from his body. At this moment, a figure suddenly rushed toward him, and that figure was Allan obviously. He calculated when Ryuudan would break his ice, and he knew that he would be damaged afterward, which is why he was now seizing this opportunity to attack. An icicle slammed down toward Ryuudan's head, wanting to penetrate it. Ryuudan was startled and, without thinking, sent a punch toward the icicle in Allan's hand. The collision between the fist and the icicle generated a strong shock wave that fortunately didn't destroy the ship. Ryuudan's power was enough to defend against the icicle even without concentrating. As soon as Allan noticed his attack not working, he whipped a kick like lightning toward his chest. Ryuudan saw it, but his reaction was slower with his body so cold, and he couldn't react in time. As a result, he was sent flying. Allan jumped in the air with a pair of icicle in his hands, then used moonwalk to dive down toward the flying Ryuudan like an eagle. Ryuudan was shocked and couldn't stabilize himself to send a punch out. Just as Allan was above Ryuudan and was about to finish him off, a figure flashed in front of him and blocked the blow meant for Ryuudan. Allan's pupil shrunk, it was Crollo. Crollo stood in front of Allan, holding a mysterious book in his left hand and a horn shield in his right hand, which stopped the icicles. Crollo opened his mouth and said, "If you want to continue this fight, I will be your opponent." Allan directly closed his hand and withdrew. His eyes looked at the book in Crollo's hand with fear. That wasn't an ordinary book. It was Crollo's special ability. The book can steal people's Nen abilities, and it's known as Skill Hunter, Bandit's Secret. With a few conditions, Crollo would be able to steal the Nen ability and seal it inside that book. And he can only activate the stolen skills when he had the book in his hand. That horn shield should be one of the stolen abilities of Crollo. Allan's eyes almost looked at Crollo with jealousy. He used his strongest attack to kill Ryuudan, but just one ability he had in the book could stop him effortlessly. The atmosphere in the ship became tense as Allan just stared at Crollo without relaxing. He could deal with Ryuudan with his current power, but Crollo was an entirely different matter. At this moment, Crollo opened his mouth and said, "Don't be nervous. I won't attack." Hearing this, Allan was taken aback and asked, "What do you mean?" "Just what I said, but of course, if you want to fight, I will accompany you." After saying this, Crollo's shield disappeared. Seeing this, Allan breathed a sigh of relief. It seems like Crollo really didn't want to fight. Ryuudan currently finished recovering from the cold that invaded his body. He looked at Crollo and said, "Chief, I'm sorry, I troubled you. Now, let me finish this kid off. This time I will use my full power without holding anything back." The atmosphere once again tensed, as Allan's heart that relaxed, once again tightened. Seeing Ryuudan ready to fight a battle of life and death made Allan determined. When both were about to engage again, Crollo stepped forward between the two and said faintly, "This fight ends now." Ryuudan was taken aback. He stared at Crollo and said with a hint of displeasure, "Chief, give me a reason why I shouldn't kill the kid now, otherwise, I won't be convinced." Hearing this, Crollo glanced at Ryuudan and said seriously, "You don't have any kind of problem with him. There is no need for a fight without any reason, right?" Ryuudan was startled and couldn't refute Crollo's words. In fact, he didn't even have any reason to fight Allan to death. The battle just made him really on edge, and wanted to vent his anger on Allan. Since Crollo spoke, he wouldn't go against his leader's words. Ryuudan reluctantly replied with an and glanced at Allan, his gaze no longer held his previous arrogance. Allan was surprised by Ryuudan's aura that receded back into his body. He didn't expect this tiger to have such an obedient side. Allan couldn't help looking at Crollo with fear and admiration. He was capable of restraining this tiger. He can even make him obey his orders. He was indeed a master. Crollo cast his gaze at Allan and said, "I stopped Ryuudan. It's up to you now." Hearing this, Allan stayed silent. He, of course, didn't want to fight Ryuudan at all, let alone a fight to the death. Therefore, he didn't have any killing intent when he fought Ryuudan previously, and even the latter didn't release any killing intent. However, if the fight continues, they will definitively kill each other. At that time, there won't be just a normal fight. It would be a fight to the death. Even though Allan would have died if he received a serious punch from Ryuudan, it wasn't a fight to the death. Now that Crollo stepped forward to end the fight, Allan had no reason to continue. But just as he was about to accept, the system gave him a new choice. 1. Give Crollo's face and don't fight Ryuudan. Reward, increase observation haki by 1 level. 2. Provoke Crollo and successfully anger him. Reward, armament haki, intermediate. Seeing the intermediate armament haki, Allan's eyes lit up. Before he could be happy, he saw the condition to get that reward and immediately gave up. Angering Crollo wasn't a good choice at all. Allan knew very well that if Crollo wanted, he would be dead now. If he was to provoke him, he would be just seeking death. He didn't want to risk his life and die just because of a reward. Instantly, Allan chose the first option. Ding! You have chosen the first option. Reward, observation haki increased by 1 level. Allan felt his observation haki improve. Previously, his observation haki could give him insights, but now, he could feel danger with his eyes closed and even make precise predictions of his enemy's attacks. It's a pity that his fight with Ryuudan came to an end now. Because of Crollo's interference, Allan didn't get the rank Yaku. The condition for that reward is defeating Ryuudan. Strictly speaking, Allan didn't manage to do that yet. So he was not given the reward by the system. However, he knew that he could get rank Yaku another day, so he wasn't disappointed. At this time, the dispute settled, Crollo directly brought Pukuno Da and Ryuudan toward Allan. Allan instantly activated his observation haki just to be safe. After his observation, haki increased by 1 level. He could predict danger efficiently now. With his observation haki, Allan could tell that Crollo didn't have any hostility toward him, which made him relax slightly. "What's the matter?" Crollo smiled faintly, "How about we get to know each other? My name is Crollo." After saying this, he introduced Ryuudan and Pakunoda to him. Allan was surprised. Crollo made it clear that he wanted to befriend him, which was unexpected. Allan didn't know how to answer. But at this time, the system gave him another choice, which was surprising. 1. Ignore Crollo and treat him as if he doesn't exist. Reward, increase your Nen reserve by 3000. 2. Respond to Crollo and befriend him. Reward, increase Moonwalk's level by 1. Allan scratched his head as those choices made him uncertain about what to do. When he fought Ryuudan, he realized how lacking his Nen reserve was. So, the increase in the amount of Nen he had was attracting. Of course, Moonwalk played a huge role in his battle as well. If he didn't have it, he wouldn't have lasted that long. However, in general, Allan believed that the most important thing now is to increase his Nen. As for making friends with the spiders? Well, Allan didn't want to get involved in their business for now. The spiders were well-known thieves with level A bounties. Allan didn't want to be seen with criminals wanted all over the world. Immediately, Allan made his own choice and glanced at Krollo before ignoring him and walking toward Gon directly. Ding! You ignored Krollo. Reward, 3,000 Nen added to your reserve. In an instant, Allan's Nen skyrocketed, and the consumed Nen from the fight was refilled again by the system. He was overjoyed, but he thought, I don't know what will Krollo do now. To be honest, he now wanted to look back and see Krollo's expression after he ignored him. For a while, Krollo was stunned. This was the first time someone actually ignored him. Yuvajin and Pakunoda were the same. They didn't expect Allan would be so defiant. After regaining his senses, Yuvajin directly shouted, Bastard, stop! Allan turned his head calmly and looked at Yuvajin, what's the matter? Yuvajin asked sternly, our chief is talking to you and you dare ignore him. Who do you think you are? Whoever I'm doesn't concern you, that's my attitude, bite me. Allan was glancing at Krollo to discern his reaction to being ignored. Krollo was calm and deep in thoughts, but Allan couldn't tell if he was just suppressing his anger. He was kind on the surface, but he looked like a Rakshasa when he got angry. But since Krollo wanted to befriend Allan, the latter knew that Krollo wouldn't be angry now. Since he wanted to befriend him, he must have something to gain from Allan. And it was indeed the case. Krollo raised his hand to stop Yuvajin and directly said to Allan, it's okay. If you don't want to be acquainted with us, then forget it. Allan smiled, it seems like you're somewhat reasonable. Then he glanced at Yuvajin to deliver his meaning. Yuvajin, of course, understood that Allan was mocking him. He indirectly called him unreasonable. Although he was angry, he didn't make a move. Krollo paused and then looked at Allan, although you don't want to be friends with us, I hope you can help me with something. Hearing this, Allan was slightly surprised. He couldn't think of anything he can do that the leader of the spiders couldn't. But he still asked, what do you need? Krollo immediately explained, the three of us should have passed the test like you, and you know that. But we didn't expect that the shameless old man was actually an examiner hired by the association. We didn't expect that if we don't answer his questions, we will get eliminated. Yuvajin has a grumpy temper. He is easily angered. That's why he threatened him, which I'm deeply sorry for that. Now that you saved his life, he should be very grateful to you, so I hope you can call in your favor to make the three of us qualify for the exam. So that what it was about? Allan nodded, but he sneered in his heart. If he didn't know Krollo's true face, he would be really deceived by him. He actually said he was sorry for Yuvajin almost killing the old man, which was really funny because he himself was a demon. But he could tell that the exam was really important to Krollo. Otherwise, he wouldn't go to such length to pass. Thinking about this, Allan said indifferently, it's really a pity. Actually, you three are masters and would be a great addition to the association if you passed. You would have very likely passed the exam and got your license by the end. Yuvajin listened to Allan and snorted, as we need you to tell us that. Allan glanced at him, ignored him, then turned toward Krollo and said, although that's true, why should I help you with nothing to gain from it? Krollo raised his mouth slightly and said, of course, I won't let you help us without compensation. Oh. Allan raised his eyebrows, what kind of compensation? Maybe I will consider it if it's good. Krollo raised his index finger and said, 100 million. What? Allan was startled. If you can help us, I will pay 100 million. Krollo smiled. When Allan heard this, he was attracted to the offer. Although he wasn't a greedy person, 100 million was an astronomical figure. If he had that kind of money, not to mention this lifetime, he wouldn't worry about money for several lifetimes. Therefore, Allan directly nodded, okay, I will try, but I don't know if I can help you. We are waiting for you then. Krollo smiled. He seemed quite confident that Allan would be able to help them. Allan directly turned around and entered the wheelhouse to find the old captain. The old man was paying attention to Krollo and Allan, but he couldn't hear their conversation. So when Allan came, he directly asked, Allan, what did they tell you? Allan didn't conceal anything and said, the three of them hope that I can ask you to give them another chance in the exam. The old man already guessed this and was not surprised. He looked at Allan seriously and said, you really want to help them? Allan nodded, but he thought in his head of course I will help them, I'm not that rich to refuse 100 million, okay, but a serious expression was drawn on his face as he said, they all are quite strong. I'm quite sure that they can pass the exam if you let them. A professional hunter is quite precious for the association, and you should know that better than me, right? Therefore, it would be a pity to eliminate them this way. The old man pondered for a while before he said, well, you saved my life. I have no reason to reuse. Fortunately for them, I still didn't make the report to the organizer yet. The three of them are back into the exam then. Hearing this, Allan was overjoyed. He directly went back to Krollo and the others to tell them the news. Thank you, Allan. Krollo smiled, but Allan was taken aback by Krollo saying his name. Then he remembered that Gon was yelling his name quite a few times before, which is probably the reason Krollo knew it as well. Of course, Krollo didn't explain how he knew, but instead, he changed the topic. Allan, about the 100 million, I will send someone to you with them after the exam is over. Or you can tell me your account number, and I will transfer the money now. Allan still didn't process any bank account, and Gon was the same, so he could only accept the first proposal. Well, I hope you don't go back on your words. Krollo smiled and said, don't worry. Allan was really not worried that Krollo would renege on his words since he was the leader of the Gen Ei Ryuudan. Let alone 100 million, even if it was 1 billion, he would be phased. Whether he will pay without trouble or not, that matter is for another time. At this time, the old man came back and said, although you three regained your qualification to be hunters, I still need to ask you why you want to be hunters the same as before. After saying this, he looked at Ryuudan and said, big guy, you first. Ryuudan was very upset by the old man's question, but he answered in the end, I'm called Ryuudan. I come to the exam because I made a bet with someone. Although he gave his reason, he still seemed very arrogant. His personality can be discerned with a glance. He was very hot-headed. Pakunoda then whispered softly, my name is Pakunoda. I want to be a hunter to make my work easier. Krollo was last, I'm Krollo Lucifer, I want to get something, but I must be a hunter first. When he said something, his face changed slightly as if he was excited before he said, it's a very rare thing, and I can only get it by becoming a hunter. His words made Allan concerned. He didn't know what the spider's leader motive was. It should be very rare, indeed. After hearing their reasons, the old man said, okay, you three passed as well. Then he made a statement, please stop fighting, for the time being, the ship can't handle destruction anymore, and if it is destroyed, none of you will be able to participate in the exam. Although he seemed to talk to all of them, his words are meant for Ryuudan. After all, Ryuudan and Allan were fighting before, and as long as he wasn't blind, he could tell the crazy beast was the one who caused destruction. Ryuudan could tell that the words are meant for him and started getting angry, but Krollo was there, and he didn't dare to disobey the latter's orders. He could only endure this for now. A few hours later, the ship approached the harbor and finally docked. At the same time, other ships started docking as well. Those ships were hired by the Hunter Association to screen the candidates. The candidates who successfully reach this place are very few, and some of the ships didn't have any passing candidate. Only those who passed the initial screening had a chance to actually take the test. After getting off the ship, the old man gave each of the five a guide sheet for the hunter test, which briefly introduced the exam's rules and regulations. The time and approximate location of the exam. After bidding farewell to the old man, Allan took Gon and left. He didn't walk with Krollo and the others. Krollo naturally didn't force Allan to go with them. After all, everyone is a competitor in the hunter exam. The fewer the competition in the exam, the higher their chances to pass. Therefore, not everyone can make friends in this exam. Allan wasn't in a hurry. After passing by Krollo and the others, he directly took Gon to a coffee to rest. According to the guide, Allan pondered a little, the first exam will be held in Zaban City, which was the same location on the show. And the examiner should be Satos. The test will start in 24 hours, which means that they need to find the location in these 24 hours. If they passed the time limit, they would automatically be eliminated. After a short break, Allan took Gon to take a cab and head toward Zaban City. The night in this place was scary, as there was no sound and no light source. The cab was moving normally, but suddenly a bang was heard as the middle-aged man driving suddenly yelled, "Oh no, I hit something!" Before he hurriedly got out of the car to check. Inside the car, Allan and Gon looked at each other when they noticed a shadow on the road. But neither of them moved. They just sat inside the car silently. They could react quickly to anything, so they weren't concerned. Suddenly, the driver's horrified cry came from outside, and then silence prevailed. Nothing seemed to happen, however, the driver didn't come back. The car's headlights were the only light source around, but it could only reach a limited 10 meters ahead. At this time, the car shook as if something was attacking it. Allan and Gon instantly escaped from the car. They could see what was attacking the car. It was actually a birdman, a magical winged beast. They seemed like birdman actually, because except for their wings, their features were that of a human. The only difference was their pupil, which seemed extraordinarily green. Suddenly, the birdman turned its gaze toward Allan and Gon, and its green pupil shined in the dark night. Gon was taken aback. Wow! What is that? It's just a birdman. Allan calmed down quickly and shrugged. The birdman stared at the two with glowing eyes. In the dark night, the atmosphere was intense, but Allan was still standing in the same place without making a move. His eyes concentrated as he was sure that there was another existence nearby. Although that existence's presence was well hidden, he couldn't hide from Allan's observation haki. This presence was hidden behind the first birdman covered by the black wings. Allan's eyes rolled as he said to Gon, "Gon, this time, you deal with this." Gon nodded and took a deep breath, then dashed toward the birdman. Gon didn't know that another presence was hidden behind the birdman. At this moment, the person hidden in the darkness approached Gon. It was another one of these birdmen. Gon's gaze was on the birdman flying in the sky. He didn't expect another one to appear. A moment later, Allan interfered and appeared in front of Gon. Boom! Allan kicked the birdman directly, sending away till he crashed into the car on the road. The car was dented due to the impact as the birdman almost saw stars dancing above his head. After dealing with one, Allan looked up toward the second birdman flying down with great speed toward him. Allan sneered. He instantly kicked the air and flew toward it using moonwalk. The birdman was taken aback as it didn't expect that Allan knew how to fly and detect him in the night's darkness. Boom! The birdman was kicked to the ground, and he happened to crash into the car as well. Now the car was completely ruined. The two birdmen stared at Allan fiercely. But when they saw him approaching, one of them spoke urgently, "Wait. Gon on the side was surprised and exclaimed, "Wow, it can speak human's language." Allan was relatively calm as he already knew it wasn't exactly how it seemed. There was something strange about how these creatures appeared here for no reason. Allan didn't want to think about it much, so he directly asked, "Who are you?" The birdman said, "We are Kiriko living in the nearby mountain. We are recruited by the Hunter Association to atone for our evil deeds. This road is on the way to Zaban City. We are here to screen the candidates." "So that it?" Allan nodded. Gon asked, "Where is the driver?" "We scared him away." The Kiriko replied. Hearing this, Allan solemnly said, "Now, our driver is driven away by you, and the car is destroyed, surely you have a way to take us to our destination, right?" The Kiriko directly nodded, "Yes, we also serve as guides. Since easily defeated us, you're qualified to go to the exam venue. Now, let us take you to the first exam's location in Zaban City." Allan and Gon didn't say anything. Immediately, the Kirikos took Allan and Gon and flew in the air toward the venue. With enormous wings attached to their backs, they flew in the night sky with astonishing speed. Less than 2 hours later, Alana and Gon successfully arrived in Zaban City, and with the guidance of the Kiriko, they found the entrance to the exam's venue. It was a concealed entrance inside a restaurant. After taking the elevator down, they reached a colossal passage underground. It was a profound and very long passage. When Allan and Gon arrived, there were hundreds of candidates already there. A lean man passed distributed numbered badges to the hundreds of candidates present. Allan received number 123 while Gon got number 223. They were that far apart because the numbers on the badges were randomized. Allan put the badge on his chest as he started looking at the candidates. This is the first exam's venue, which means that the candidates that passed the screening are all present here. If Kurapika, Leorio and Killua participated in this year's exam, they should be here. Of course, Allan didn't want to befriend them. He just wanted to see these guys. However, after scanning everyone present, Allan didn't see them. There were only two possibilities for this. The first one is because they didn't take this exam. The second is because they still didn't find this place. There were about 10 hours before the time limit. At this time, Allan saw someone eye-catching. It was a fat-headed guy. This person was Tompa, the self-proclaimed rookie crusher. "Hi, I'm Tompa." As he said this, Tompa stretched his hand. His intentions were clear. He wanted to get to know Allan and Gon and befriend them. Gon didn't think about it and directly and stupidly stretched his hand and said, "Hello, I'm Gon." Tompa smiled and stretched his hand toward Allan. Allan didn't want to talk to this guy, but suddenly he thought of something. This was the best opportunity to use Grimm's hand. It was the first ability he got when he was transmigrated to Hunter x Hunter world. Now was the best opportunity to reap someone's luck, and Tompa was the best test subject. His Grimm's hand can reap any kind of luck, be it fortune, bad luck, relationship luck, career luck, misfortune, and so on. The disadvantage of this ability is reaping bad luck from others. As far as Allan knows, Tompa failed the exam dozens of times. He was anxious about receiving his lousy luck. But it didn't matter. He still had to try. After all, this ability can be handy, depending on its effect. There are 5 conditions to activate the Grimm's hand ability. 1. The user's hand must touch any part of the target's body for a full 5 seconds. 2. The user must know the target's name. 3. Only one hand can be used, either right or left, for this ability. 4. When this ability is activated, the user will enter a vulnerable state. None can't be used. 5. This ability can only be used once per day and on one target in their lifetime. As soon as Allan recited the conditions, he stretched his hand and smiled faintly at Tompa. "Hello, I'm Allan." Tompa smiled naively and prepared to withdraw his hand, but Allan didn't let go. The Grimm's hand was activated. Allan fulfilled the second, third, fourth, and fifth conditions. What's left is the first condition, which is to touch the target's body for 5 seconds. At this time, Allan was secretly counting down in his heart. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The 5 seconds passed, and Allan directly retracted his hand. Tompa looked at Allan weirdly and said, "Brother, it's just a handshake, no need to get passionate, right?" "Excuse me, my hand just cramped." Allan laughed. Of course, Tompa didn't believe him, but he didn't say anything about it. Allan stopped paying attention to Tompa because he suddenly saw a big hand reach out from the void toward Tompa. Tompa didn't seem to notice this. The hand passed through Tompa, and a golden light orb appeared inside it. The golden light represents fortune. Allan was overjoyed. He was quite satisfied with getting this from the first time he used the Grimm's hand. If you have fortune, you will make money. Whether he was doing business and buying lottery tickets, he is surely going to get money out of it. Tompa's fortune was robbed by Allan. He would never get money from anything now. No matter what he does, it would be fortunate for him to just have something to eat from now on. At this time, Tompa took out 2 cans of drink from his backpack and handed each of Gon and Allan 1 can. "This a juice from my hometown. It tastes sweet and delicious. You must be thirsty from the journey, right? Here, have one." Tompa looked at them with a silly smile. People who didn't know him would think he was sincere. A sneer appeared on the corner of Allan's mouth as he knew that Tompa was the rookie crusher. He uses every method to eliminate newcomers. If they drink that juice, they would probably spend the next 2 days in the toilet. "Why don't you drink?" Tompa asked. Allan was about to answer, but the system interrupted him. Ding! Please make a choice. 1. Drink Tompa's laxative juice. Reward, a great sword that can cut steel as if it was mud. 2. Make Tompa drink his laxative juice. Reward, mysterious treasure chest X1. Allan instantly chose the second option without any hesitation. "Are you kidding me? You want me to drink laxative willingly?" As for the reward for the first choice, it wasn't attractive at all. In contrast, he was more interested in the mysterious treasure chest. It also just happened that he wanted to make things difficult for Tompa, to see if he dared drink his own juice or not. If he didn't dare drink it, then he would have a reason to make him drink it. Either way, Tompa will drink it. Allan suddenly opened his mouth and said, "Tompa-san, is your juice really good?" "Of course, there is no problem with it." Tompa smiled, but his answer came too fast. A sneer appeared on Allan's mouth as he said, "If that's the case, how about you take a sip first?" Tompa looked embarrassed as he didn't expect Allan to say that. He put a powerful laxative in the juice himself, and ordinary people would need 3 days and 3 nights to recover from it. Fortunately, he brought the antidote. In order to make Allan and Gon, Tompa gritted his teeth and took a sip of the juice. "Look, there is no problem at all, right?" Tompa wiped the corner of his mouth and smiled. "Well, it seems so." Allan nodded. At the same time, the system's prompt appeared. Ding! You successfully made Tompa drink his own laxative juice. You've been awarded, Mysterious Treasure Chest X1. Allan didn't open the treasure box immediately, instead, he kept it in the system for later. Besides, it was not the time to look into the treasure chest now. Seeing Allan not responding, Tompa suddenly felt tricked and shouted, "I drank it all, why don't you drink?" Allan was about to reply, but suddenly, he noticed something up in the distance. He saw Krollo, Ryuudan, and Pakunoda just arriving at the venue. He said to Tompa casually, "Tompa-san, do you see those 3 people? They seem thirsty. Why don't you go give them juice?" Tompa took a look and saw that Krollo and the others were new faces and immediately walked over. As for getting Allan to drink, he gave up. After a while, Allan saw Ryuudan take Tompa's juice and drink it readily. As for Krollo and Pakunoda, they just ignored Tompa from the moment he approached them. 1 can, 2 cans, 3 cans, Ryuudan drank a few cans as if he was really thirsty. He was quite fit physically, and laxatives had no effect on him. Tompa was dumbfounded. He didn't think that the world had such monsters. Tompa was like a clown in Allan's eyes. He expected that Ryuudan would teach Tompa a lesson, but Ryuudan seemed to be enjoying the drink instead. Looking again, Allan found that Tompa moved away from Ryuudan to talk to a silver-haired kid. Tompa was talking to Killua, who had 1 foot on his skateboard and leaning against the wall, and gave him his drink as well. A treacherous smile appeared on Tompa's face as he already could imagine Killua staying in the toilet for 3 days straight. However, when he saw Killua drinking a can after the others, his face stiffened. It was the same situation with Ryuudan. Killua just drank the juice as if there is nothing with it at all. Tompa was ready to cry. Why did so many freaks join the exam this year? Even a young lad is a freak. Tompa thought. Ryuudan and Killua both knew that the juice contained something strange, but they were confident in their bodies and were thirsty, so they ignored it and drank readily. Allan was paying attention to Tompa, and after seeing Killua and Ryuudan almost torturing him without even noticing, he was happy. He looked at Tompa playfully as the latter looked around for other praise. Not long after, 4 more candidates came to the exam venue. The first was a tall guy with strange needles stuck on his face and looked terrifying. Allan instantly recognized him. He was Killua's big brother, Illumi Zaldik. Special needles stuck on Illumi's face to change his appearance. He is quite handsome without those needles. He participated in this exam to follow his little brother Killua. Illumi, who was looking at his brother, gazed at the approaching Tompa, and said, "Is there a problem?" Tompa's blood almost froze as his body was covered in cold sweat. He directly stopped any thoughts about tricking this guy and said, "No, it's okay." Allan followed his gaze and saw Tompa approaching a bold guy who was doing push-ups. This bald guy had an excellent facial feature and a pair of sharp eyes. He was Hanzo, a ninja. He was quite alert and declined Tompa's juice. Tompa once again started his search, and his eyes fell on another 2 people. A person wearing a blue suit, he was tall, thin, and wore sunglasses. The other person had short blonde hair. They were Leorio and Kurapika. The 2 walked closely as they obviously knew each other. When Tompa approached them, they were vigilant. Tompa tried a few times, but he couldn't get them to accept his juice. He felt really depressed. He really didn't expect the newcomers this year to be so challenging to deal with. Allan's mouth raised slightly as he enjoyed Tompa's misfortune. But now, he is more interested in the exam and what it will bring. Illumi, Killua, Hanzo, Leorio, Kurapika and many others from the show appeared now. Besides, Crollo, Pakunoda, and Ryuudan were here as well. This exam will be really interesting. At this time, someone seemed to scream as if he was being slaughtered. Allan looked back and saw someone on the ground screaming pain as dozen playing cards were embedded into his body. His injuries weren't fatal, and the one who hit him obviously just wanted to teach him a lesson. In front of him stood a tall man. This man's face had a teardrop-shaped tattoo on his left cheek and a star-shaped one on his right cheek. His hair was erect and pointing to the back. He held playing cards in his hand while a playful expression appeared on his face. Obviously, he was the one who hurt the person on the ground. Many eyes fell on him, but he didn't seem to care at all. Instead, he looked at the injured guy and said, "Be careful next time. You have to apologize when you bump into someone." The onlookers suddenly realized that the man on the ground bumped into that guy and didn't apologize, making him retaliate. But wasn't it excessive to injure him so much just because he bumped into you? Allan looked at the man fixedly before turning his gaze away and sneered with a thought, "Even Hisoka is here, it seems like this year's exam is interesting indeed." The number of candidates increased as time went by, and during this time, Allan noticed that Ponzu and Pakal. They had small parts in the exam, but they were somewhat interesting. Pakal is average, but with some luck, he became a professional hunter. In the Chimera Ant arc in the show, Pakal and Ponzu both discovered the Chimera Ant and wanted to report them, but they weren't lucky this time and were eaten. They were the tragedy duo of the Hunter x Hunter series. All the characters appeared, and no matter if they were strong or weak, Allan remembered them. After a long 24 hours, a man wearing a dark coat adorned with a red tie appeared. He had lavender hair curled at the end and blue eyes as well as a long pointed chin. His most distinctive feature is his mustache and lacking a mouth. This person is Satos, the examiner for this part of the exam. He looked around at the examines with surprise and said, "It seems that this test is quite lively." The first exam was very simple. All they had to do was follow Satos through the passage and reach the second exam. Many examines followed Satos dazedly. The long passage without an end in sight increases the psychological pressure on their mind. What seemed like a simple test was actually a test of physical strength and endurance, and mental fortitude. Only a few people were actually relaxed as if they didn't feel any pressure. The total number of candidates in the first exam was 639, but before the exam even started, Tompa left because of depression. So, the official number of people is 638. Allan led on and followed the candidates without any delay. There was no need to rush and complete the exam after all. He just had to follow from behind. As they ran, Allan felt the candidates in front of him accelerating. He knew that Satos was moving faster. So the candidates had no choice but to speed up as well. At this time, another choice from the system prompted in front of Allan. Ding! Please choose. 1. Cross the passage at your fastest speed and reach the first. Reward, increase the amount of NAN by 2000. 2. Cross the passage at your fastest speed and reach the first while eliminating 50 candidates using reasonable methods. Reward, Conqueror Haki, HOAS Hoku Haki, Novice. Allan was delighted. He didn't think that Conqueror Haki would appear now. The rewards were getting more and more advanced as time passed by. Without hesitation, Allan directly picked the second option. The reward isn't given immediately as he needed to eliminate 50 candidates while reaching the finish line as fast as possible. Allan wasn't in a hurry. With his current ability, it wasn't difficult to finish this task. Of course, he could do it if Ryuudan doesn't compete with him. He knew that 3 people here could hinder him from being first: Krollo, Ryuudan, Hisoka, and Illumi, Killua's brother. These 4 are first-class nin users, they practiced nin for a long time, and it won't be easy to compete with them. As for Killua, Hanzo, and Kurapika, Allan didn't care at all. Because all of them still didn't learn their nin, and their true potential was buried deep within their bodies. Therefore, he needs to be careful about the first 4. Allan needed to surpass them all and reach the finish line as quickly as possible. Allan looked at Gon beside him and said, "Gon, I will speed up, try to keep up." Gon nodded, "Okay." Allan directly accelerated. After a while, Allan already passed half of the candidates. Allan passed by like a gust of wind between them. "Wow, be careful, you bastard." When Allan passed by Kurapika and Leorio, the latter was taken aback and almost fell. Leorio cursed as he was ready to catch up to Allan, but the latter already disappeared from their view. Kurapika looked at Allan's back, disappearing, and said, "Give up, Leorio, you can't catch him." "Damn it, if I ran into that guy, I would beat him up really good," Leorio said with anger, but he had to admit that he couldn't catch up. Suddenly, a boy with sea urchin hair quickly passed them, and once again, Leorio almost fell. "Hey, bastard! Not another one, stop there!" Leorio bellowed in anger. Gon, who was chasing Allan, heard this and turned back to apologize, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to bump into you. By the way, my name is Gon. If you feel wronged, come see me at the end of this exam, I want to chase after Allan now, so I'm going ahead." Leorio saw Gon innocently apologizing, and his anger was reduced by half, but he was still angry nonetheless. "Hey, what the hell is that kid? He actually introduced himself so I can find him later. And who the hell is that Allan? Why is Gon chasing him? The one named Allan should be the one who almost bumped into you the first time, right?" Kurapika guessed. Leorio was taken aback, in other words, they are together. Kurapika nodded, "Well, it should be. Before the exam started, I paid attention to both of them, so I recognized them." Hearing this, Leorio smiled and said, "That's good then. After we finish this exam, I will go find Gon. I don't want Gon to apologize, but that Allan kid has to apologize. He almost ran into me and didn't even say sorry." "I'm afraid that would prove difficult," Kurapika said almost without interest. The underground passage was like a bottomless pit, and the longer people ran, the helpless they felt. After 40 kilometers, the first person was mentally broken as he fell back from the group. At this time, Allan was already advancing as fast as he could. He looked up and saw Killua on his skateboard with his hands in his pockets, moving forward leisurely. Allan didn't mind Killua as he continued forward and passed him. Killua, who was leisurely moving forward, immediately felt provoked by this and exclaimed, "You think you're the fastest? Okay, we'll see." Killua's expression became serious as he started going faster. At this time, a hedgehog-headed guy caught up to him. Killua saw Gon running so fast and couldn't help asking, "Hey, are you chasing that guy?" Gon nodded before his eyes lit up and exclaimed, "Wow, your skateboard is so cool. Do you want to play?" "Yes." "How old are you?" 12. Killua felt happy and said, "We're the same age." "Hehe, then we're probably the youngest candidates in this exam." Gon said sheepishly. "My name is Killua. What is your name?" Killua rarely saw someone his age, so he had to ask. "My name is Gon." "Gon, did you come by yourself?" "No, I came with Allan." "Allan?" Killua frowned, "Is it the guy who just passed me?" "It is." Gon said. "Why is he running so fast?" Killua wondered. Gon shook his head and said, "I don't know, probably because he was bored running so slowly. So he wanted to reach the finish line quickly." Is it fun to race?" Killua muttered. "Hey, Killua, I want to catch up to Allan, so I will go first." Gon's aura instantly enveloped him as his speed exploded. Killua, on the side, was stunned. He thought that Gon was better than normal kids at best, but he didn't expect to be so strong. That felt so strong. "What is your background, Gon?" Killua muttered to himself, then put away the skateboard. Killua's mouth raised in a smile as he looked at the disappearing back of Gon. "Interesting. It seems that this exam can't be taken lightly. This hunter exam is full of hidden masters." Immediately, Killua disappeared from his place as he started chasing after Gon with astonishing speed. He was born as a killer because he was one of the Zalik. He received hellish training from an early age, and in terms of speed, even people with Nin can't match him. Hisoka and the disguised Illumi were advancing together unhurriedly at this time. "Really unexpected from you, Illumi. You're actually here to participate in the hunter exam." As he said this, Hisoka glanced at Illumi with interest and continued, moreover, you made yourself look like this, is there someone here you know? Because Killua also is here to take part in the hunter exam, so I followed to watch it. Hisoka was confused. Killua, he raised his brows and said, who is that? Killua is my little brother, Illumi said. Illumi was talking like a cold machine with an indifferent voice. Hisoka raised his brows even further and said, well, I didn't think that you had a side of you that care about your little brother even though you're a cold-killing machine. This is really unusual, Illumi. Illumi didn't say anything back. At this time, a figure ran between the two of them and continued forward. Allan looked back and sighed in relief when the two didn't chase after him and muttered, good, these two aren't going to chase after me. Only Crollo and the others are left. At this time, Illumi said, who is that? I don't know. Hisoka shrugged. His aura is quite powerful, you have to pay attention to him. I know. Hisoka smiled. Are you going to chase after him? Illumi asked. Hisoka shook his head, I don't really want to go after him, but I already remembered his presence so that I can meet him later. What about you? I'm too lazy to chase after him, and even if catch up to him, it won't give me any money, so it's meaningless. Hisoka was speechless when he heard Illumi's reason. At this time, the hedgehog-haired Gon passed through them. Hisoka looked at Gon's back, and his eyes squinted a little kid. Look as old as my little brother, Illumi said. That's aura he was using. Hisoka licked his lips, he has great potential if he learned Nen at such a young age. Illumi glanced at him and said, do you want him? That's a delicious fruit that has yet to mature. I really want to pick him off. Hisoka's eyes squinted like a pervert with a hint of excitement. If you see my brother, you will definitively look forward to him growing up even more than that kid. Oh, really? At this time, Killua passed between them quickly while holding the skateboard in his hand. The one just now, is he your brother? Hisoka stared at Killua's back. Yes, that's Killua. Illumi nodded sincerely. Hisoka smiled, not bad, is he like you, a professional killer? Yeah. Illumi nodded, Killua is really good. In the future, he may be the one who inherits our father's business and become the head of the Zaldik. Hisoka's eyes lit up as he exclaimed, that's really incredible. At the forefront, Crollo, Ryuudan, and Pakunoda were running behind Stotts. By the time Allan caught up to them, Sato's and the others were climbing a long staircase. Allan's eyes narrowed as he looked at the staircase. The staircase was very steep, and it will take a lot of effort to climb it quickly. Many candidates were sweating miserably right now. They thought it was just a relaxing marathon, but they didn't expect it to be hard. This was hard because the tunnel was 100 below the ground, and fresh air was scarce in this place. And with the limited space and the number of participants, the oxygen in the air became even thinner. Therefore, they consumed much more energy than they usually would in this case, which increased the pressure on them. At this time, Sato's led the group up the staircase with Crollo and the others just behind him. They weren't even making an effort to climb the stairs. After all, they were masters of Nen. Something like climbing a staircase is effortless. Allan was now 10 meters behind them. Allan had a plan as he looked at them up ahead and directly jumped up. Moonwalk. Allan directly rushed forward while in the air. Compared to running up the stairs, using moonwalk was less straining than walking up the stairs. It consumed less energy and was way faster. In a short while, Allan surpassed Crollo and the other two and even passed Stotts. What? It's that bastard from the boat. He dares to jump over our heads. Ryuudan was angry and shocked, while Crollo and Pakunoda didn't say a word and continued following Stotts. As for Sato's, he was shocked speechless for a while. He knew many abilities, but never in his life did he see someone walk on the air and couldn't help exclaiming, walking on the air? What kind of ability is that? This is really an eye-opener. Allan successfully passed everyone using moonwalk. When he was about to reach the end of the tunnel, he stopped. At this time, all candidates were still running and climbing the stairs. Allan's mouth raised into a smile. Now that he reached the finish line, he needs to eliminate 50 candidates and get his reward. He thought for a bit before he squatted down and touched the ground. Soon, his aura changed into ice that covered the entire staircase. Senkiro Ice Field, 1,000 kilometers ice field. The ice extended all the way down the staircase. As long as it was frozen, then the difficulty will be doubled. Allan sneered, seeing ice field extend further and further from him. He just had to wait for 50 candidates to drop out due to his ice before he passes the finish line, which is the door beside him. At this moment, Sato's, Crollo, and the others stopped suddenly. They saw the star's frozen crystal. It was a beautiful scene, but for many candidates, it was like a nightmare. The steep staircase was now frozen, and anyone who can't keep his balance will slide down to the bottom. Hehe, did the candidate who ran in front of us do this? Interesting. Did he want to eliminate other candidates using this? Stotts instantly understood Allan's intentions. But this move could offend him as the examiner and a couple of hundreds of candidates. Ryuudan angrily shouted, "That bastard, I will beat him up when I see him later." Krollo was dissatisfied with this as well. Allan's move undoubtedly provoked him. Krollo directly said, "Let's go up first, then talk." "Good." Ryuudan nodded. A few people took a step on the ice without a problem, but they knew that if someone took a step carelessly, he would slip and slide down to his doom. In the end, a few candidates rolled down the stairs and knocked a few others with them. They were close to the examiner, but now, they were quite a distance away, and even if they succeed and reach the end of the stairs, the examiner would have left already, and they won't be able to get to the second exam site. That was equivalent to being eliminated from the exam. Allan stood quietly at the top of the stairs while looking at the people down, being unable to climb with a sneer on his face. Finally, he looked at the exit and went out. As soon as he stepped out of the door, the system handed over his reward. Ding! The host is the first candidate to reach the end of the tunnel and successfully eliminated more than 50 candidates using reasonable means. Reward, Conqueror Haki, House Hoku Haki, Novice. The Conqueror's Haki is something that can instill fear in any being. It's the disposition of a king forming a force that can intimidate all beings. Whoever is exposed to that force would fall unconscious if his own will is weak. And at this moment, Allan gained such power. Haki is divided into 3 levels, namely, Novice, Intermediate, and Advanced. With each level, the requirement for his mental and physical power will increase. Right now, Allan's Conqueror's Haki was merely Novice level, so he can't control it at all. He can't use it on a single target for the time being. But he wasn't disappointed at all, since he knew only with when it reaches higher levels can his will control it. As long as he grows physically and mentally, Allan would be able to master the Conqueror's Haki gradually. His current goal is to complete the Hunter exam. Allan looked back at the tunnel and sat down cross-legged. He turned 2/3 of the stairs into ice, which doubled the difficulty for the candidates. The next phase of the exam is passing through Milzy wetlands. Many rare birds and exotic animals live in this forest. It was also known as the Swindler's Swamp because half of its creatures are cunning and greedy by nature. Like the man-faced ape, noggin-lugging tortoise, frog-in-waiting, hypnosis butterfly, ruse raven, claymore mushroom. Most of these animals use illusion and traps to get their prey, and that's the reason why this place is called the Swindler's Swamp. Once you step into this forest, there is a high chance that you will be tricked. And to reach the second test, the candidates need to pass through this forest. Although Allan knew about this, he wasn't familiar with the road, so he could only wait for the time being for the others to get here. At this time, someone said from afar, "Hey, come here." Allan looked at the man walking out of the forest. "Who are you?" Allan asked. Then, his brows frowned unconsciously. The man replied, "I'm the guide responsible for leading the candidates through the forest." "Guide?" Allan looked at him suspiciously. "Don't stand there in a daze. I will take you to the next exam venue. What about the other candidates? Don't you need to wait for them? It doesn't matter. I will leave a way for them to track us and pass the test. You're the first person to arrive here, so I will personally lead you there." Allan pondered a little as he heads this, then he smiled, "Then I will trouble you, Guide-san. Don't mention it. It's my job." The guide said and walked toward the forest. Allan looked around and sneered before the following. After entering the forest, the surrounding quietened as if danger was approaching. Allan followed the guide before stopping abruptly. "What's wrong?" The guide turned his head and asked Allan. Allan looked back. "Guide-san, shouldn't we take the road? Why should we pass through the forest? Did you do this on purpose to lead me into the grove and then do me in?" The guide suddenly panicked and instantly explaining, "Walking into the forest is faster, and there are no obstacles here." "Is there really no obstacle?" The guide's face darkened, hearing Allan's question. "What do you mean by your question? Do you doubt my identity?" "That's it." Allan replied as if he already knew everything, which he indeed did, and said, "That's the end of this trick, Guide-san." "Ah, that's wrong, you're not even the guide. Since I was discovered, I will kill you first." Suddenly, the guide's face started changing. His face became hairy, his teeth sharpened, and his stature became larger. In a blink of an eye, he turned into an ape-like animal. Allan sneered, seeing this, "It's really a disguise, you're a man-faced ape." The man-faced apes are dangerous creatures living in the Milzy wetlands. They can imitate anything about a person, be it his appearance or his behavior. Although they are like this, they can't deal with humans without traps, and that's what this ape was currently doing. Allan realized this so-called guide was a man-faced ape as soon as it came out. He wanted to see what it wanted, so he pretended that he didn't know its tricks. Seeing the ape revealing himself, Allan directly used his observation haki and discovered that lurking around them, there were lots of apes. "Come out. We can share this human." As he said this, more than a dozen man-faced ape immediately rushed out and surrounded Allan. You guys are dead. Suddenly, Allan released his conqueror's haki out. All the grinning man-faced apes fell on the ground with the impact, and their eyes turned white. Allan looked at them in disdain. A beast will always be a beast. Their wills are too weak, and even if they gained wisdom, they are helpless when faced with a mental attack. However, even humans with a strong will and mental fortitude won't face such an overwhelming impact. Allan looked at the unconscious apes and smiled in satisfaction. Conqueror's haki was efficient in cleaning out the trash without any effort. A few minutes later, Allan walked out of the woods and returned to the tunnel's exit. At the entrance, Satose, Hisoka, Crollo, Uvijin, Illumi, Pakunoda, Kurapika, Leorio, Hanzo, and many other outstanding candidates stood waiting for the other candidates to gather. Ah, Allan, where have you been? I thought you already went ahead. Gon was surprised and delighted when Allan appeared. Is he Allan? Killua, by the side, asked Gon. They are already acquainted and somewhat friends now. Allan was about to answer Gon, but suddenly his expression changed as a playing card come flying at him like a shuriken. Allan snorted coldly and dodged the cards, then looked at Hisoka in the distance. Only Hisoka would use playing cards as a means of attack after all. Sorry, it's just to make sure it's really you. I hope you don't mind. Hisoka looked at Allan and smiled. Make sure it's me. Allan frowned and said, what do you mean? Gon beside him explained, Allan, just when we came out with Examiner Satose, a guy pretended to be the real examiner, so Hisoka-san threw a few cards at both of them to see who is the real examiner. It turned out that a creature that could disguise as a human was the fake examiner. It was an ape-like creature. Allan glanced around and saw a corpse of a man-faced ape. I also ran into a few man-faced apes now, he pretended to be a guide, so I followed him. Then, Gon was startled. Of course, I dealt with them and came back, Allan said with a relaxed tone. That's good. Gon breathed a sigh in relief. Then, Allan looked at Hisoka and said, since there is a reason for this, let's forget about it, but next time you attack like this, I will think you're just trying to start a fight. So, what will you do then? Hisoka said curiously. I will make you pay, that's simple, Allan said coldly, and everyone knew that he wasn't joking. Suddenly, Conqueror's haki overwhelmed them instantly and disappeared, which caused even Hisoka to profoundly and seriously look at Allan. This was something more potent than any killing intent. I see. I won't do it any more then. He returned to his relaxed expression and smiled. No one could tell what's on his mind. Allan snorted coldly. He believed that his Conqueror's haki could be used to discourage anyone from fighting him. After half an hour, candidates started appearing from the exit of the tunnel one after the other. After some time, a bald man started shouting, which damn bastard froze the stairs down there? It made us consume so much energy to get here. Following Baldy's roar, many started agreeing with him as well. Yes, who did it? If you have the balls, stand up, don't be a coward. And at this time, the people who knew who it was couldn't help and look at Allan, and amongst them is Satose and Crollo. Allan didn't escape and instantly cleared his throat with a cough and said, I'm the person you're looking for. His voice wasn't loud, but it instantly attracted the crowd's attention. Allan was already their number one enemy, the number one enemy of the public. It's that guy, right? It seems so. Examinee #123. There were lots of discussions in the crowds, and at this time, the Baldy instantly roared, Bastard, why did you do that? Do you know how much effort it costed us to climb up? All the examines looked at Allan with hostility and anger. Without exception, everyone thought that what Allan did was excessive. Allan expected something like this already, but he didn't care because, even if all of them attacked together, they wouldn't be able to beat him. The only ones he was afraid of were people like Crollo. But since Crollo was silent, it didn't seem like he would interfere, which made Allan sigh in relief. Because once one of the Nin masters here like Hisoka, Crollo, or Illumi wanted to fight, it will get troublesome for him. Allan faced the dissatisfied candidates and shrugged, I think you all know that although this is the hunter exam, it's still a competition between candidates. The fewer the competitors, the higher the chance to pass the exam, right? Therefore, you who can pass the test can be considered somewhat outstanding. As for those who failed, they were weak. Even if I didn't do something, they would have already be eliminated for various reasons later. So, strictly speaking, I reduced the number of competitors for you. You should thank me for that. The candidates were still not convinced by Allan's words and directly shouted, You bastard, you wanted to eliminate us as well. Ah, that's right, if I can eliminate you, of course, I would. Allan sneered. Everyone was shocked when they heard this. They didn't expect him to be so honest about it. His remark made them suddenly realize something, he was right. This was a competition. Suddenly, a voice sneered and said, Hi, then, if I kill you here, then I can be considered as reducing the number of competitors, right? Chapter 40, fighting again. Allan recognized the voice and also knew who said those words. It was Yuvijin's voice. Allan already expected a conflict with Yuvijin from the start. Because of the battle on the ship, Yuvijin wouldn't let it go. And although Allan found it troublesome, he wasn't afraid of fighting Yuvijin at all. If he backed down here, it means he will get eliminated. His power improved slightly from when he fought Yuvijin on the ship, so even if he can't beat Yuvijin, he can survive without injuries. Yuvijin saw Allan's calm look and directly released his aura. Come, let's fight again. This time, I will use my full power. Yuvijin showed a ferocious smile. Although you are strong, you can't beat me by yourself. As he said this, Allan looked at Krollo and Pakunoda and said, I suggest that your comrades help you here. Yuvijin was arrogant, and even though Krollo was his leader, he wouldn't let anyone fight with him. So, Allan's suggestion seemed like an insult to him. And Allan was betting on this all along. He didn't want Krollo to join the fight, or else he didn't have any chance to survive. And he was right. As long as Pakunoda and Krollo don't interfere, he can deal with Yuvijin. At this moment, Yuvijin's punch was already in front of Allan. With Allan's recent experience, he dodged easily, and as soon as it landed on the ground, it exploded. What? You want to play hide and seek as you did on the ship? Yuvijin failed to land a hit on Allan, but he wasn't angry. Instead, he sneered at Allan. He was implying that Allan was a coward that can't face him head-on. Well, since you want to fight head-on, let do so. Allan's words made Yuvijin smirk. Huh, fighting me, head-on? Okay, I will beat you to a pulp then. Humph. Allan snorted coldly. He knew that Yuvijin was strong, and he was nervous fighting him. As soon as Yuvijin started moving for the next punch, Allan already made an icicle in his hand that directly collided with Yuvijin's fist. In an instant, a shockwave brutally spread all around them, almost knocked down the other candidates. Seeing this kind of fight made the other candidates shocked speechless. Satos didn't stop the conflict at all. He just stood by the side like a bystander. He glanced at the time and said, I have no right to intervene in your fight, but I have to remind you that if one of you died because of a fight, then the other person will be eliminated no matter what. The implication was simple, if this is a life and death battle, then it didn't matter if either of them won since elimination is certain for both of them. This was not good for both of them, but for the others, it was great news. If those two powerful candidates were eliminated, they would have a higher chance of passing the exam. Allan and Yuvijin, of course, knew this, but neither of them stopped fighting at all. Upon seeing this, Satos shook his head and said, Listen well, everyone, we will pass through the forest to the second exam next. Whoever lags behind and doesn't get there in time will be eliminated. Remember that well. At this time, the tunnels exist slowly closed. Dozens of candidates who were still climbing were desperate as they saw the light at the end of the tunnel disappeared. But no matter how much they cry or shout, they won't make it in this exam. At this time, Satos started moving forward and leading the candidates toward the second exam location, Vyska Forest Preserve. In the blink of an eye, only a few people stayed behind. After all, even though Allan's and Yuvijin's fight was worth watching, they were here for the hunter exam. They didn't want to miss this opportunity to see a mere fight between two people. The people who stayed behind were Krollo, Pakunoda, Hisoka, Illumi, Hanzo, Kurapika, Leorio, Gon, and Killua. Allan and Yuvijin were extensively focused even to look away. Kurapika and Hanzo were both amazed by this fight, especially since they didn't train in Nin. Allan and Yuvijin released their aura without restraints. The momentum alone made Kurapika terrified. Allan helps half a meter-long icicle in his hands as he attacks Yuvijin's fists. If this were a normal icicle, it wouldn't even withstand one hit from Yuvijin, but he used Shu to strengthen it. The collision between the two was akin to two angry beasts fighting for their territory. At this time, Yuvijin's mind was really in turmoil. He felt Allan's current power, which was much stronger than he was before. The current Allan can face him head-on even though he isn't an enhancer. Did this guy hold back when we fought on the ship? Impossible. This is impossible. Yuvijin's aura erupted like a volcano as he decided to end this fight quickly. Nin rushed to his fist as he prepared his most potent attack. Allan's eyes narrowed as he frowned. You think I'd let you use your Big Bang impact that easily? Allan used most of his aura to condense a 5-meter-long ice pillar and threw it at Yuvijin without holding anything back. This blow can't be underestimated at all, and Yuvijin knew that. Damn it! Yuvijin's Big Bang impact was interrupted by the ice pillar, which angered Yuvijin much. After a loud bang, the ice pillar burst open. Allan took advantage of the cold aura in the air and directly used another original attack. Ice Storm. In a blink of an eye, Yuvijin was frozen in the ice. Crack! Crack! A moment later, Yuvijin used high aura and broke through the ice. His eyes held his wrath as he looked at Allan.